committee will come to order. Welcome and thank you for joining today's hearing, where we will hear from the Undersecretary Fordyce from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. After brief opening remarks, members will receive testimony from our witness today, and then the hearing will be open to questions. So once again, good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'd like to extend a special thanks to my friend, Undersecretary Fordyce, for coming before the committee today to discuss the historic investments made in American farm policy through last year's Working Families Tax Cuts Act. I look forward to hearing your testimony, as well as a chance to receive an update on the significant progress that you and Secretary Rollins have made implementing the many provisions included in H.R. 1. House Republicans fought hard to make those key investments to our conservation and farm safety net programs, not because it was easy, but because it was extremely necessary. For the first time in a generation, U.S. farmers and ranchers have an adequate farm safety net to fall back on in times of bad weather and market volatility, as well as new investments into our locally led conservation programs. Those of us who represent rural America know firsthand that times are tough in farm country, and that is why the investments included in H.R. 1 were so critical. Without those, producers would still be waiting for an updated safety net. Because of those investments, the farm safety net is now based on the current cost of production and recognizes the needs for modern agriculture. It is equipped to meet the moment, providing at least some degree of stability for an industry that has always faced a wide variety of challenges and uncertainty. These updates include enhancements to ARC and PLC, boosted premium support across all levels of crop insurance coverage, and improvements to the dairy margin coverage program, all of which have already been implemented due to the great work from Undersecretary Fordyce and his team. Thanks to the work of this committee, as we look to the future, access to commodity programs have been expanded through historic investments for producers to add additional base acres to their operations. Changes to standing disaster programs such as Livestock Indemnity Program and the Tree Assistance Program further bolster the tools available to producers in the face of predation or natural disasters. Last summer, we also invested billions of dollars into conservation programs through H.R. 1 by increasing the baseline funding by over 25%. Conservation programs are now funded at over $8 billion per year. We know that locally led voluntary incentive-based programs work, and this reinvestment will provide significant and increased support for most Title II programs, which are largely oversubscribed. I look forward to hearing Undersecretary Fordyce's insights on the implementation side of these critical programs, which we will continue to champion and seek to make further improvements through passage of the remainder of the Farm Bill. And while the updates of H.R. 1 were much needed across the board, we still have a job to do and must complete the remainder of a full 5-year Farm Bill authorization. The bipartisan Farm Bill passed out of the House earlier this year is over in the very capable hands of my good friend Senator Boozman, and just yesterday he released a discussion draft to move the process forward. In the meantime, I'm very much looking forward to hearing from Undersecretary Fordyce today on the progress made, as well as what we can expect moving forward, and with the remaining provisions from H.R. 1 that need to be implemented. With that, I'd now like to welcome the distinguished ranking member, the gentlelady from Minnesota, Ms. Craig, for any opening remarks that she would like to give.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 1 year ago, Republicans forced the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill through Congress. It gave handouts to Elon Musk, the world's first trillionaire, and the rest of the president's billionaire buddies, even as inflation ate up the paychecks of hardworking Americans. It cut Medicaid by nearly $1 trillion, putting rural hospitals and health clinics at risk of closure. Today, we aren't talking about those things. Instead, we are looking at some of the investments the bill made, particularly to our farm safety net and conservation programs. Now, we all know that there were many Farm Bill programs that needed new investment, particularly the farm safety net programs. They should have been done in a 5-year, 12-title Farm Bill. Unfortunately, these investments, as well as much of Trump's billionaire bailouts, were paid on the backs of our nation's most vulnerable, hungry children, veterans, and older Americans, by cutting $187 billion from SNAP. Since those cuts were made, over 4 million Americans, including over 800,000 children, have had their food taken away. So as we talk about implementation of these investments, we need to be clear-eyed about the cost. The cost is increased hunger throughout our country. Of course, while these investments are beneficial, farmers readily acknowledge that they will not cover the pain and the losses inflicted by this administration's ongoing policies and actions. Tariffs, trade wars, and Trump's war with Iran have cost farmers tens of billions in lost sales, driven up diesel and fertilizer costs, and suppressed commodity prices. According to the USDA, production costs are expected to be higher than previously anticipated for every major crop for the 2026 growing season. Farmers are paying more to repair their tractors today because of this administration's tariffs on steel. Farmers are paying more for fertilizer because of this administration's war in the Middle East. Farmers are paying more to service their debt because of this administration's inflationary policies. If the improvements made to the farm safety net were so strong, then why are farmers asking for supplemental farm assistance? They are asking because farmers recognize reality when it hits them. Unlike the president, farmers don't love inflation. Unlike the secretary, they don't think they're living in the golden age of agriculture. Unfortunately, we have an administration that is out of touch with the challenging reality farmers and American families are facing. In a more normal environment, farmers might turn to the USDA conservation programs to help them weather a difficult farm economy. H.R. 1 did at least preserve the historic Democratic investments in conservation that were originally made in the Inflation Reduction Act. But the Trump administration undermined those changes by cutting the number of conservation staff by around 24%, which has meant that those dollars are harder to access than ever. Just last year, the number of conservation contracts awarded dropped by 20 to 40%, even as farmers applied for these dollars. So as we discussed today, the programs intended to help farmers, let's keep these important points of context in mind. I want to thank the Undersecretary for joining us today, and I look forward to hearing his testimony. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I yield back.
The chairman requests that other members submit their opening statements for the record so our witness may begin his testimony and ensure there is ample time for questions. I am pleased to welcome to the committee our witness for today, the Undersecretary of Farm Production and Conservation at USDA, Mr. Richard L. Fordyce. Undersecretary Fordyce, thank you for joining us. We'll now proceed to your testimony. You have 5 minutes. The timer in front of you will count down to 0, at which point your time has expired. Please begin when you're ready.
Chairman Thompson, Ranking Member Craig, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the meaningful work accomplished and underway by the hardworking men and women at the Farm Service Agency, Natural Resources Conservation Service, and Risk Management Agency to support our nation's farmers, ranchers, and rural communities. I come before you not only as Undersecretary of the Farm Production and Conservation Mission Area, but as a lifelong farmer whose values were shaped by an upbringing in agriculture on a family farm in Missouri. A few weeks ago, Secretary Rollins came before you to outline the importance of the programs we deliver and the people we serve. She spoke about cutting red tape, reforming and modernizing outdated programs and infrastructure, and restoring the integrity of our programs. At FPAC, our mission of putting farmers first is front and center for all these issues. Today, I want to discuss how we are modernizing delivery systems, strengthening our programs, and implementing the historic investments Congress entrusted to us so that we can deliver the farm safety net our producers deserve, access to capital through various loan programs, the resources needed to keep working lands in working hands, and the help necessary to recover from natural disasters. Our Farmer First philosophy begins with recognizing that farmers and ranchers deserve timely support and exceptional customer service. As was shared by Secretary Rollins, FPAC was running on over 500 separate, antiquated systems, costing taxpayers over $1 billion annually. To address these inefficiencies, we are modernizing a fragmented system through the One Farmer, One File initiative. This initiative provides producers a single, streamlined record that follows them across the agencies within FPAC. The Farmer Bridge Assistance Program was the first initiative to operate entirely on our new platform. Through FBA, producers received more than $10 billion in less than 2 months. It was the fastest-moving support program FSA has ever launched, demonstrating what is possible when strong policy is paired with modern technology. Building on the FBA, FSA is currently accepting applications for the Assistance for Specialty Crop Farmers program, which provides over $1.6 billion to fruit, vegetable, and nut producers. Another foundational component of our One Farmer, One File is modernizing acreage reporting by transitioning the process into the 21st century. FSA has launched an acreage reporting modernization pilot across counties in 11 states. This pilot enables the use of digital geospatial acreage reporting tools, which reduces burden on FSA county office staff and enables better sharing and utilization of crop acreage reporting within USDA. FPAC has also been hard at work on program implementation. When President Trump signed the historic Working Families Tax Cuts Act, a top priority of FPAC became implementing programs quickly and effectively to deliver the meaningful investment in the farm safety net, crop insurance, and conservation programs Congress provided. RMA has implemented the vast majority of its provisions, which expand benefits for beginning farmers and ranchers, increase coverage options, and make crop insurance more affordable. The Working Families Tax Cuts Act provides significant and permanent funding for NRCS conservation programs, extending many Farm Bill authorized programs and delivering over $34 billion through fiscal year 2031, the largest long-term investment in NRCS conservation programs in decades. Just this week, NRCS announced the enrollment period opening for the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. To date, Farm Service Agency has published 2 rules implementing 10 sections of the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, and I'm proud to say we will be publishing the final 2 implementing rules. Last week, FPAC announced organizational changes across its 4 agencies. FPAC has always been a field-focused organization with nearly 98% of our workforce already living outside Washington, directly working with producers and local communities across the country. FPAC's reorganization builds on that strength by aligning leadership, resources, and support functions closer to where our customers live and work. The reorganization does not include any changes to county or state FSA and NRCS staff. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Craig, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to share with you how the entire FPAC mission area is delivering the programs that make a difference for our producers and the nation. We will continue modernizing our systems and supporting producers across all sectors of American agriculture. I now look forward to answering your questions.
Mr. Undersecretary, thank you so much for your important testimony today. At this time, members will be recognized for questions in order of seniority, alternating between majority and minority members, and in order of arrival for those who joined us after the hearing convened. You'll be recognized for 5 minutes each in order to allow us to get to as many questions as possible. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Undersecretary, I want to again thank you and your team for the work you've done thus far in implementing the provisions from last summer's Working Families Tax Cuts Act. The number of projects we created for you to get across the finish line is no easy feat. And you also managed to do it while rolling out disaster and economic assistance programs, so I applaud you for all of that. One thing I hear from the folks back home and around the country is how critical the work of the Farm Service Agency is in assisting producers across the country. We recently saw a massive historical planting record data dig by the agency to begin allocating the 30 million base acres added to H.R. 1, which was extremely strenuous and time-consuming. This is the first step of the many that FSA will take to fully implement H.R. 1. In your experience, is FSA adequately staffed at every level to continue carrying out the implementation of the remaining pieces of H.R. 1, as well as maintain the service that producers across the country have come to accept and expect?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. And I think before I answer that question, I just want to give a huge shout out to the staff. You know, we can make decisions here in Washington, we can direct policy, but it's the folks in the county offices that are the heroes. They're the ones where the rubber meets the road, and they're the ones that get the work done. You know, as we know, we did have some folks that did voluntarily take the DRP. It was a decision that they made that they felt was best for their families, and in some cases, we do have county offices that don't have the staff in them that they did have in one sense. And then, but we do feel very strongly that given where we are from a staffing level, that we are delivering the mission. We've got, as you know, we've got state executive directors in every state that manage the operations of the Farm Service Agency, and they have been really pretty creative in moving folks around. We do not have a hiring freeze. The Farm Service Agency is hiring. Unfortunately, we are constrained by budget, and we are hiring to attrition, but hopefully in fiscal year 2027, we'll get a little relief from those budget constraints related to staffing, and we'll continue to hire up in those offices. I would also share that the Farm Service Agency has a very robust tool that they have been using for a number of years to inform staffing. They can look through this tool. It's referred to as the Optimally Productive Office tool, and it informs hiring in critical areas. It informs the state executive directors and others where the workload is and where additional staffing is needed. I would say that, again, I applaud those state leaders within FSA for being flexible and being nimble and being able to get folks where the work is.
Very good. You know, to help encourage more public-private partnerships, Congress enacted the Sustains Act in 2022 to authorize the donation of private funding into the standing conservation programs. Since then, USDA has not provided details on the use of this authority across the covered programs, but did mention its availability as a part of the regenerative program announced in December of 2025. Can you give us an update on the implementation of Sustains Act? The former chief seemed to focus on Sustains only in the context of the regenerative pilot. Has that idea been reconsidered?
Yes, sir. Another great question. I really think there's a lot of value in the Sustains Act, having private entities invest in conservation. I think it's fair to say that we're putting the final the final touches on how we would implement the Sustains Act as it relates to conservation contributions. And I think that initially we thought that the guardrails would fit perfectly with the regenerative pilot program, but I think that's under reconsideration and potentially opening that up to all conservation work.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. I do believe Sustains is really going to be the icing on the cake with the other investments that we've made into conservation, public-private partnerships. I now recognize the gentle lady, the ranking member, for her line of questionings for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for being here in your testimony. As part of the implementing regulations for H.R. 1, the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation removed buy-up coverage for preventing planting in federal crop insurance, which wasn't required by that law. Can you please explain to me how it is farmer first to take away risk management tools from farmers by removing this buy-up coverage, and based on the overwhelming opposition that USDA received in the comments, will USDA reinstate the optional prevent plant coverage option for farmers?
Ranking member, that is a great question. I can share with you that when the rule was published, it was published as an interim final rule to accept public comment. on that provision. As you indicated, we got over 350 comments on that provision in that regulation. Overwhelmingly, those comments were to reinstate PP5. That is under consideration currently. I don't have an answer as to which direction we're going to go, but I am positive personally that we'll have a positive resolution to that.
When do you believe you will have an answer by for farmers?
It should be soon, and the reason that it should be soon is that we need to certainly inform the AIPs that option is back on the table. So I can't give you, Ranking Member, a specific date, but it will be very soon.
Thank you. Switching topics here just a tiny bit. Last year, the number of farmers applying for EQIP and CSP contracts increased somewhere between 10 and 15%. However, the number of EQIP contracts dropped by 38% and CSP contracts dropped by 21%. Do you think this has anything to do with the 24% reduction in NRCS staff? And if not, then how do you explain the percentage of farmers who successfully apply for EQIP contracts is now at the lowest level since 2020?
So certainly EQIP and CSP are critical programs for conservation. I think a lot of the components of those programs that make them so desirable is the flexibility that it allows landowners, farmers, and ranchers to participate in conservation that's tailored to their individual farms. I would say that there probably are instances, Ranking Member, where we do have maybe potentially a staff shortage, which could impact that. That is a short-term situation. We are advertising and hiring people at the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I would also point out as well that the Natural Resources Conservation Service for many years have had extremely strong partnerships with partners. Those partners either represent the wildlife advocates, others, soil and water conservation districts are critical to helping also provide technical assistance and work related to EQIP and CSP. And those partners, they're incredibly passionate about the work they do. We're fortunate to have them as part of the team at NRCS. And so I think you're going to see good things going forward.
Thank you very much for that. It's interesting that you were so highly complimentary of the EQIP program, because if the House Republicans' farm bill, skinny farm bill, becomes law, it would actually reduce EQIP funding by about $1 billion through 2030 compared to the H.R. 1 funding levels. How many fewer EQIP contracts would you expect to see if that cut is adopted? And there seems to be a disconnect between USDA and House Republicans on whether or not we should fund EQIP fully.
Ranking Member, I was not aware of that, and I can get back to you with a number.
Thank you. We'd love to know how many contracts. Family farmers would love to know, if the House Republican skinny farm bill is adopted, just how many of them additionally will lose access to this program. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr. Lucas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Undersecretary Fordyce, for being here today. Prior to passing H.R. 1, one of the biggest priorities for my farmers was updating the farm safety net to reflect the needs of today. Mr. Fordyce, in your opinion, how will the updates made to ARC and PLC and H.R. 1 continue to keep pace with producers as they face new and existing headwinds well into 2031?
Thank you for that question. I do think that really some of the historic changes to ARC and PLC that were in the Working Families Tax Cut Act are transformative. I believe it was 2014, the last time reference prices were addressed. So the increase in reference prices related to those two programs is critical. Couple that with an additional 30 million acres of base acres that are going to be allocated across the country. And I think, I think when we look at what that program is going to look like for the next iteration of ARC and PLC, it's going to be incredibly positive.
Switching gears a bit to conservation. Mr. Fordyce, I had an opportunity to discuss the Advanced Markets for Producers, or the AMP Act, with Secretary Rollins last year when she testified before this committee. And I was encouraged by my discussion with the Secretary, and I was particularly pleased to see that the program would focus on providing most of the funding directly to farmers. Mr. Fordyce, can you share with us an update on AMP and USDA's vision for the future here? How is USDA redirecting the program to ensure that dollars and practices put farmers first?
Yes, sir. Another good question. So the AMP program was an attempt to get existing grants reconfigured, and I would just compliment the grantees, the folks that had the initial grants, and their ability to work with USDA to redraft those agreements. And I would say that one of the paramount changes that we made was each one of those grants needed to at least contribute 65% of the value of that grant directly to farmers. And again, I will reiterate that that the grantees were more than willing to come to the table and talk through changes as to how that could happen. And in just reconfiguring those grants with that priority in mind, we were able to add an additional close to $500 million of that total grant that would actually go directly to farmers.
The Watershed Program is one of the most effective locally led flood prevention programs in the nation and represents nearly 1/3 of all dams ever built by the federal government. H.R. 1 rightly included historic investments into this program. However, today there is a significant unobligated funds and at the same time a lengthy backlog of projects waiting for approval. This administration has been heavily focused on cutting red tape, and I believe the Watershed Program could benefit from that mission. Mr. Fordyce, I'd like to ask you to work with me to identify steps at the NRCS that they can take to ensure the timely delivery of these life-saving dams. Will you work with me on this, Mr. Undersecretary?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Your testimony highlighted the $34 billion increase in conservation programs through 2031. In your opinion, what will this mean for popular voluntary programs like EQIP that we know are oversubscribed?
So I do believe the additional funding is critical. As I answered a little bit ago, EQIP and CSP are popular programs, along with the RCPP and others within the Natural Resources Conservation Service. I think it's certainly critical. And one of the things that I've witnessed really my entire adult life is farmers and ranchers will always do the right thing when they know what the right thing is. And I'm referring to conservation really in that vein. And I think we've learned a lot. We know more about how can we improve the landscape through new technologies, new innovations. A focus on soil health is something that, it's relatively new, but I think critically important.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back and recognize Mr. Costa from California.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, Undersecretary Fordyce. I'm pleased that you're here. You represent fourth-generation farming family. I'm third generation. For years, I have said that food security is our national security, and in the San Joaquin Valley that I represent, we live that every day. California is the #1 farm state in America, but we're not feeling the loving from the USDA. Bankruptcies are up 44% from last year. Farmers, ranchers, dairymen, and women and growers are feeling not only a lack of connection, but we still produce food on America's dinner table and around the world. Let me ask you the first question on farm loans and Farm Service Agency. My office is hearing from California producers, and I work with the 8 counties from Kern County all the way to Stanislaus. The cuts that have been made in FSA are detrimental. They have delayed payments, prior approvals that have not been paid. The backlog has many causes, but the USDA cannot cut, reorganize, and reshuffle the local capacity and act surprised when farmers are stuck waiting, because that's the condition. When Fresno County, one of the most important agricultural counties in California and in the country, have trouble recruiting an FSA executive director, that tells me Washington isn't making it, it's making it harder for farmers to do. You thought to threaten to close the Fresno County and Kern County offices, 2 of the top ag counties in California. I don't get it. The Supplemental Disaster Relief Program is a good example. Producers whose losses fit existing crop insurance or non-insured crop disaster relief program data can move faster, but the specialty crop and diversity growers often face more paperwork. Under Stage 2, they've had to apply on a crop-by-crop basis and a county-by-county basis when some of them farm in multiple counties. It makes no sense. So let me ask, how many approved and unpaid Farm Service Agency cases are pending in California, and what's the USDA doing to clear the backlog?
Well, thank you, sir, for the question. And let me be the first to say how much we appreciate California and its ability to feed the nation and to feed the world. That does not go unnoticed.
I thank you for the compliment. Please answer the question.
I don't know the number.
I don't know is an answer.
Pardon me?
I don't know is an answer. Could you please get that information for me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that would be helpful. And on Supplemental Disaster Relief Program, will you commit to simplifying Stage 2 so specialty crops, which are the majority of the crops we grow in California, over 400 specialty crops that are diversified, so growers are not stuck applying on a crop-by-crop, county-by-county basis while other producers move faster?
Yes.
Good. Let's work on that. Let me go to the dairy program. You know, we're the largest dairy producing state in the nation. California dairies have been national leaders in reducing methane contribution. They are recycling nutrients, reusing manure, and turning waste into compost, fertilizer, long before Washington called it a regenerative agriculture. But there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Digesters can be an important tool for larger operations. Small and mid-sized dairies need options too. Manure separators, composting, compost-bedded, packed barns, and other practices avoid methane before it's created. So the House Farm Bill did not create a standalone alternative manure management program, but it did include language in my CALS Act in EQIP for practices that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, including methane. So will the Natural Resources Conservation Service make it clear that the manure methane practices can qualify under EQIP? And will you work with California so small and mid-sized dairies can actually use the program?
Yes, sir. You know, you're referring to conservation practice standards within NRCS, and a lot of those practice standards do include manure management, digesters, and other things. And I know that those are subscribed in other parts. I'm assuming that they're subscribed in California. Yes, absolutely. We will. We want to make every practice standard that's available with the Natural Resources Conservation Service available in every state.
I like that answer. Let's work on it, okay?
Yes, sir.
And let me invite you to California, and we can get together with a roundtable, bipartisan group of folks, and we can list these issues as it relates to the FSA offices that are woefully undermined. And when the secretary here talked about a reorganization plan, I'll tell you, folks back home in farm country where it's hurting are less interested in your reorganization plan than ensuring that the programs that are oversubscribed are able to be made available to farmers, ranchers, and dairymen and women in California and throughout the country. Did you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, much more work to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here, and I hope that while we can have pointed questions, maybe we can also be courteous. I want to start by iterating something that is important for people to understand. The Working Families Tax Cuts restored nearly $60 billion to farm safety net programs and conservation programs that had been eroded over the course of time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And we know the farm economy is still struggling. My neighbors are struggling. You're trying to correct course following 4 years where we had explosive inflation. We had no new trade deals. I know my colleagues on the other side like to point out that we have an ag trade deficit from 2025. That's true. That was the 4th year in a row of ag trade deficits. So those trade deficits started under Biden, and it just takes a little while to get it corrected. But because of work done by Republicans last summer, higher levels of premium support across all levels of crop insurance coverage were able to be applied retroactively, and producers have already seen some of those benefits. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Also, because of those investments, producers will have a new bolstered safety net come this October when program payments go out. Is that correct?
It is correct.
And for those who, like myself, wonder why those payments won't arrive until October, that was the Democrats who set us on that course in the 2008 Farm Bill when they insisted that payments be delayed until the following fiscal year as a budget gimmick. We can debate all day long how the farm economy got where it is. But the one thing's not debatable is that Republicans have delivered time and again for rural America. Mr. Secretary, could you provide clarification on USDA's updated ruling regarding the treatment of limited liability companies? Specifically, how does the new interpretation affect LLC eligibility and participation across USDA programs, and what guidance should stakeholders be aware of as the new policy is implemented?
Yes, sir. So equitable treatment of entities provision in the Working Families Tax Cut Act now today will treat LLCs, S corporations like other entities. And so we've worked through that and implemented the equitable treatment of all entities so that they will be treated equally. As you know, the pass-through provision allows additional pay limits to members if they are actively engaged. That is one of the provisions in there. Is we are treating all of those entities the same today. And it does carry the actively engaged provision.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Craig asked my second question, so I'm going to move on to a third question that I have that deals with the crop insurance. And so we increased funding for program compliance and integrity in the federal crop insurance system to $6 million annually, as well as increasing RMA's budget for compliance activities to $10 million annually. We all know the importance of ensuring that federal crop insurance programs run smoothly and without fraud. So I'm interested to hear about how FPAC plans to efficiently implement these increased funds, and I will be honest with you, I hope that we prosecute people that we catch committing fraud in this system.
I think program integrity is the most important thing that we can do to protect crop insurance. Obviously 99.9% of crop insurance insureds are abiding by the programs, but we occasionally have folks that don't seem to be able to follow the rules. In that case, we've got a very robust compliance department at RMA. It certainly is Administrator Swanson's priority to make sure that there's integrity across all of the products, all the states, with everyone that's participating in crop insurance. And again, a robust compliance department that does the investigations, that roots out the folks that aren't playing by the rules, and then a Department of Justice that's very aggressive in making sure that these folks aren't going to do it again.
Undersecretary, I appreciate you being here and your professionalism. I think it's important that we stamp out fraud throughout all activities at the USDA. With that, I yield the 1 second I have left and acknowledge Mr. McGovern from Massachusetts for his 5 minutes.
Well, thank you. Undersecretary Fortas, thank you for appearing here today, and I appreciate that you bring some actual career experience to your role. But I'm going to be honest with you that there are decisions being made in your areas at USDA that I don't agree with at all. And if I had more time, I'd ask you some questions, but my time is limited, and I need to use it to address something with our chairman and the Republicans on this committee. I think this is really an outrageous hearing. It is outrageous for Republicans on the Agriculture Committee to try to take a victory lap over the big ugly bill. I mean, we should be doing a hearing on how to fix the damage that was done to our farm economy in the big ugly bill. I mean, it takes my breath away that this is the topic of today's hearing. Farm country is hurting, and families are struggling in this country. Donald Trump has taken a wrecking ball to the farm economy. Farm input costs are skyrocketing. Tariffs and Trump's stupid illegal war with Iran have sent prices soaring. Shipping is more expensive. Processing is more expensive. Overseas markets are gone. Land costs are increasing. Food industry monopolies are getting bigger. Farm worker communities are being terrorized by ICE. USDA is supposed to be there for our farmers, but it's being run by people who seem intent on dismantling it. Now, I did not walk away from our hearing with Secretary Rollins a couple of weeks ago feeling confident that she understands what farmers are going through and what USDA is supposed to do about it. The mass firings, the rescinding of grants and programs that help farmers thrive, the boneheaded reorganization, it feels like it's all done to help the big get bigger and the rich get richer. I mean, these genies are not going back in the bottle anytime soon. And with all this going on, what is it the Republicans in Congress are so proud of? The big ugly bill. I mean, the largest upward wealth transfer in American history, kicking an additional 4 million people off of food assistance, making hunger worse for 800,000 children. Republicans in Congress basically said, sure, we can help some farmers, but only by increasing hunger. I mean, seriously? What farmer asked you to make it harder for 4 million people to buy their food? What agriculture trade association came in and said, give us a modest, insufficient bump in our safety net program by making 800,000 kids go hungry? This is not the work of serious people. People who were serious about helping farmers and families would not turn a blind eye to malpractice at USDA. They wouldn't have advanced the laughable farm bill proposal that we saw in the House, or the dead-end one that we just saw come from Senate Republicans. They wouldn't sit quietly while Donald Trump tears everything down. The bottom has fallen out for so many people in this country, especially our farmers. And pretending that these things aren't happening, that everything is just fine, is shameful. It is pathetic. It's something that I'd expect to see from North Korea or Russia. Instead of admitting that you've gone down the wrong path or that dear leader Trump could ever be wrong, you're holding a pep rally. It's business as usual. You're telling farmers not to believe their lying eyes. I think it is beneath this body, and I think it's a rotten thing to do to people whom the Agriculture Committee is supposed to be helping. I don't know whether Republicans talk to farmers in their districts. I do all the time. But if you did, you'd know that they are not happy, that they are hurting, that they are struggling. And let me make one final point. If we don't do something to at least stall the implementation of the nearly $200 billion in cuts to SNAP, they will go into effect and hunger is going to skyrocket in this country. Already we have 48 million people in this country who are food insecure or hungry. It is shameful, it is unconscionable that that is the reality in the United States of America, the richest country in the history of the world. And the idea that we are here not trying to prevent this catastrophe from happening, not trying to address the real impacts on our farm community that have come directly from the big ugly bill, I think, again, is outrageous. We need to do better. We need to get our heads into reality and understand what farmers are going through in this country, what struggling families are going through in this country. So I'm not going to sit here and just make believe everything is fine and ask questions like this is a hearing on something that is business as usual. This is not business as usual. This is outrageous, and we need to do something about it. And I yield back.
Chair would like to submit for the record the text of the law enacted July the 4th, 2025, which reads, exception to the rules, under 18 or over 65 years of age, any of the changes made under the law that were signed, enacted July 4th, 2025, under 18 or over 65 were exempt. Chair now recognizes Mr. Rouser from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had to go back and look at the title of today's hearing to make sure I was in the right place. It says to review the implementation of Farm Safety Net disaster and conservation programs. My goodness, is that not what we're supposed to be doing? Mr. Fordyce, thank you for being here. You have a very important job. I appreciate everything that you're doing. Let me just ask a general question, and just a top of mind topic here. What, in your opinion, as you're trying to implement the law, what's your greatest challenge? And then following up with that, how can we be helpful?
That is a good question. I will tell you that I could not be prouder of our team at FPAC. They're both political and career employees at the mission area that work every day. They're super passionate about agriculture. Most of them have a farming background or very close to having a farming background. And so I will start the answer by just saying how thankful we are that we have a great team. I think the day that I was nominated, Ag Media asked me, what is your priority as the undersecretary if you make it through confirmation, and ultimately I did. But that very first day I said, we need to modernize our delivery systems. We need to modernize our IT systems. We have antiquated systems. I alluded to it in my opening testimony that are costing taxpayers a lot of money and don't work very well. And I'm happy to say that we are well on our way to doing that. And in that IT modernization, we also are able to develop tools that are going to be tools that our farmers and ranchers appreciate as they engage with our agencies. But maybe more importantly, they're going to be tools that our employees are proud of. When they come into the office in the morning, they know that things will work. They know that things will, as they have a farmer standing in front of them, they're not going to be taking a lot of that farmer's time that day or that rancher's time. And so I think those are the things that I'm the happiest about. And certainly, the House Agriculture Committee is an institution that supports agriculture, and I appreciate that so much. It's really, truly an honor to be here today to explain how we are moving forward and implementing the provisions that you indicated a minute ago. And so I don't know that I have a specific ask about how you can help. But certainly, I think your support is incredibly important as we navigate through implementing all of these things.
Well, absolutely. So I talked to our state FSA committee a good little bit, and they're a little concerned about the staffing, issues and being able to deliver on these programs in a timely fashion. We've got, from what they tell me, I think about 75 employees that will be terminated. Now, that includes about 34 or so, as I recall, that are temporary. And anyhow, the staffing issue definitely is one that I think you're going to hear from a lot of people because of that concern there, that rub there.
So, yes, absolutely. And you know what? When I'm traveling the country, talking to farmers, they bring that issue up as well. We are, I think we're managing in most cases, and the DRP was a little unpredictable. We had folks in some counties where we had a majority of folks took DRP. In some counties, no one took DRP, and so those counties look very much like they did before the opportunities for those folks to select that. And we are, again, managing that to the best that we can. And really the constraint that we have right now in hiring is a budget issue. We're hopeful that in FY 2027, through the appropriations process, that we will be able to see more of a normal appropriation related to staffing. And at that point, we will start to address that in a major way.
Yeah. Well, I'd like, if you don't mind, to have your team and my team consult, because I want to make sure that our farmers in North Carolina have access to the programs in a timely manner. And I don't want, any issue that we could resolve up front, to be a problem with that.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentlelady from Oregon is recognized.
Thank you to the chair and the ranking member for today's hearing, and thank you to Undersecretary Fordyce. According to the Office of Personnel Management, as of April 2026, there were about 8,900 employees in the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, and in 2025, there were just about 11,500, and that is a decrease of over 23% of NRCS staff. I've heard from Oregonians that the lack of NRCS staffing directly affects the ability of producers in my state and district to access federal conservation programs. They rely heavily on NRCS staff for determining which conservation practices they should pursue on their land, help in the application process, and other technical assistance on the ground. Without that adequate NRCS staff support, farmers in my district and across the country are really struggling. Can you tell me, how does a 23% decrease in the NRCS staff support that direct technical assistance on the ground to federal conservation programs under NRCS?
Very good question. And while the numbers that you quote are correct, I believe that NRCS is meeting the mission. And I mentioned earlier that NRCS has a very unique relationship with partners. Those partners could be soil and water conservation districts. We know the partners: ducks, pheasants forever, quail forever, and those folks are critical in also helping provide technical assistance to move out those dollars within NRCS. You are correct. Farmers rely on those conservation programs. I think that every farmer, and I said this a little bit ago, every farmer that I've ever met will do the right thing when they know what the right thing is. And so from a conservation standpoint, I think that's critical. And so we continue to do that. I didn't get a chance to mention on the NRCS side, through our One Farmer, One File initiative, the IT modernization, the ability to provide and create new tools. We are right now developing what we're calling the Integrated Field Tool, which is a digital tool that NRCS staff will have, and it'll go into conservation planning, design, and other things. They're working with a farmer, rancher, landowner on their property. They're able to look at that, what they've suggested, what the farmer, rancher, or landowner have agreed to, digitally sign that application, which then obligates the dollars immediately. There'll have to be some additional planning and some additional design in most cases, but should really streamline and really speed up the interaction between NRCS staff and farmers, ranchers, and landowners.
And I love efficiency. I love new IT. It's sad, though, because a lot of my rural areas don't even have the broadband that they're able to get Wi-Fi and internet access onto their farm. So it is really difficult. So we actually do need the personnel and the people on the ground. So I recently heard from a farm service provider about a farmer in Polk County in my district who faced a lot of difficulty due to an unfulfilled NRCS conservation contract related to funding changes. And in quotes, the NRCS cuts made by the current administration have not just reduced staffing, they have eliminated accountability for promises already made. Farmers who are mid-contract, mid-wait, mid-hope were simply abandoned. What message would you like me to relay to my farmers who feel like this administration has abandoned them?
Well, Congresswoman, if you could share the county with me, we can definitely dig into that and see what the issue is, because I would like to know that myself. That is not the way we propose to operate in any form or fashion. So we would be happy to work with you and your staff to dig into that specific issue in that county.
Thank you, I appreciate that. NRCS lost almost a quarter of its workforce in 1 year. H.R. 1 added money to the Permanent Farm Bill baseline for conservation programs. How exactly does USDA intend to get a historic increase in conservation dollars out the door with the fewest field staff in years?
Again, continue to deliver the mission with the folks that we have, with the efficiencies that we're putting into the agency. The NRCS, they have a hiring plan. So we have folks within that local county office, but we also have folks that are engineers, they're archaeologists and others that are also critical to that mission delivery. And so we're hopeful as we continue to move forward through the hiring process to certainly plus up staff at NRCS.
My time has expired.
Today's
Thank you,
time
and I yield
expired.
back.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from South Dakota for 5 minutes.
Mr. Fordyce, thanks for being with us today. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me. Obviously, when producers are hurting, there is a role for Congress. And yet, I can't help but thinking about the tens of billions of dollars of ad hoc relief that we've come together to provide during the 8 years I've been in Congress. And I'm always left wondering if that's the right approach. Ad hoc relief just seems too slow, too political, too unreliable. Again, sometimes desperately needed. And yet I find myself wondering if there's some things we can do to the existing safety net, the risk management programs, whether in Title I or crop insurance, that might make that ad hoc relief less common. So let's just start. I'd love to get your take on me opening up this big can of worms.
Well, Congressman, that is a can of worms for sure.
No, in fairness, you did allude to this in your testimony too, so you're kind of teeing us up here.
So, I believe that certainly American agriculture producers are resilient. If they weren't, they wouldn't be in this business, right? I mean, there are times when things are good. There are times when things, are not necessarily. Secretary Rollins has said a number of times that, the programs that we administer, if we do anything ad hoc related to USDA, needs to be building on farm resiliency, building on the support that farm is able to withstand things, right? Whether they're economic or whether they're natural disasters or whatnot, in a better way. And I think we look at that and we look at opportunities to be able to do that.
So I think the Secretary's answering a really important question, which is how do we deliver that relief effectively? I'm asking a different question, which is there a way we can be forced to deliver it less often because standing programs fill more of that gap?
Absolutely, and I think the changes to the standing safety net programs, ARC and PLC, in the Working Families Tax Cut Act, I think do deliver that. When you see higher reference prices and additional 30 million base acres in that program, I think that's critically important.
It does. Part of the issue I sort of sense, and it's not like I sat down with a huge cross-section of stakeholders to talk through this, but I mean, there are some critical commodities in the South that don't have a crop insurance product available to them. That does seem to be, they're far more likely to get left in a lurch when you have really problematic market conditions. Am I reading that right?
What crops, Congressman, are you referring to?
Well, rice doesn't have a standing crop insurance product, at least if memory. We don't do rice in South Dakota, but it does seem like those folks are more exposed, and it would be hard to just tell them to, we know times are tough, but forget about it, go bankrupt.
I think, and I'd have to check on that on the rice piece. But I think there are a number of programs within USDA. Almost all of them congressionally supported and mandated. One is the marketing assistance loan.
Yes.
Marketing assistance loans, it appears to me, certainly are conducive to southern crops. We certainly utilize those in the Midwest as well, but that's another, I think, important marketing. That's another important marketing opportunity for producers. Provides cash flow, gives them options and things that maybe they don't. I just got a note that says rice has crop insurance.
Well, there we go. You can't count on the guys from Mississippi and South Dakota to have all the answers, or Missouri and South Dakota to have all the answers at all the time.
That is
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So as we close with my time, just as when we're finished with the next farm bill, because obviously a lot of these ideas take quite a little bit of time to socialize, what should we be aiming for? What's the center of the target if we wanted to make ad hoc assistance even less likely? I agree with you. I think reconciliation did a good job of moving us in the right direction, albeit incrementally. What more can we do?
I just think continue to provide robust risk management programs that farmers and now ranchers, we've got a number of livestock products now in kind of our risk management suite, and those safety net programs, and make the safety net programs effective. I think that certainly when we've got great crops and we've got great prices, obviously those safety nets don't come into effect. But I think those are two critical components of our federal farm policy.
Thanks much, and I yield.
And the gentleman's time has expired. Now recognize Mr. Sorensen from Illinois for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Undersecretary Fordyce, for being here today to testify. I want to start by giving credit and thanks to the hardest working people that I know. You know, in my district, the sun rose this morning at 5:20, and farmers in Illinois were up to see it. There's more work to be done after supper, and many in farm country are just finish up the day's work when the last light slips below the western horizon at 9:20 in the evening. Farmers want to succeed by using their talents and their know-how, not by cashing a check when the White House feels it's necessary. They want certainty in their jobs, and they want resiliency when disaster strikes. It doesn't take a meteorologist to tell you that Illinois now leads the nation in tornado touchdowns here this year. And many of those have occurred in farm fields and farm country and small hometowns in Illinois, across Mr. Bost, Ms. Miller, Ms. Budzinski's, and my district. Mr. Undersecretary, you oversee vital programs like crop insurance, and I appreciate your attention to making this work for them. You also oversee conservation funding at NRCS, which is essential to keeping our farmland resilient for the next growing season and the next generation. You know, I agree with our ranking member that we should be heralding a bipartisan 5-year farm bill that would yield certainty, even in the face of a failure by an administration. Instead, the GOP's H.R. 1 is being paid for by funds taken from hungry people and cutting vital programs in Middle America. Now, I believe in fiscal responsibility, but taking funding from vulnerable families is not how we should be budgeting the most important agricultural programs. But let's get on to my questions. H.R. 1 included an expanded subsidy for administrative and operating costs for states with high loss ratios, which disproportionately benefits southern crop growers. And I want to follow up from my friend from South Dakota's question. Is the agency considering further relief for Midwestern states with very low loss ratios? As you know, productive farmers like those in my district tend to overpay to offset losses in other regions.
That is a great question, and it is actually very timely. The Risk Management Agency, from time to time, does rating studies. We just have received a rating study to look at that very thing. When I travel, I hear exactly what you have said. We haven't had time to necessarily, I think, 100% digest what that rating study looks like. But that is one of the things that RMA does do and conducts those rating studies.
Could you share that with our office?
Is that at some point? Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You know, I want to move on to conservation. 2,400 people lost their jobs at NRCS in 2025, one of the hardest hit agencies at the USDA. We lost 20% of our NRCS workforce in the land of Lincoln, putting even more strain on farmers who need assistance improving their soil health. Is there a plan to meet the needs here? Because nowadays, you know, it seems like all my constituents here, when they want to call and get a solution to a problem, is your call is very important to us, stay on the line. Shouldn't we be making sure that we have the workforce to meet the demand here?
I do think that is critical, and I've indicated a couple of times that NRCS is advertising, is hiring positions, not only at the local level, but also in those critical areas of engineers and archaeologists and other positions that help that agency move those practices forward.
So help me understand. So last year we had 78 NRCS folks working for farmers directly in Illinois. In your budget for next year, fiscal year 2027, there's 5 in the entire state of Illinois. Agriculture is the #1 driver of our economy in Illinois. So how can the USDA expect that to work?
So Congressman, can you repeat that, the numbers?
That we're cutting down from the numbers of hundreds down to single digits.
So NRCS, and I don't know specifically on Illinois' hiring plan, but we are, as an agency, planning to hire up to 9,500, which if we spread that out across the country, I would think that Illinois would have a positive number. So I don't know.
Let's manifest that.
I would like to visit more with you or your staff about what that number looks like.
Thank you. When we talk about modernizing our agency, I hope that there is that focus on what we are doing for those farm families that are hurting today. Mr. Undersecretary, thanks for being here today. I yield
Thank you.
back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr. Finstead for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. Thanks for holding this hearing today, and thank you, Undersecretary Fordyce, for being here and for your service to our farmers and our country. But, before I get into a couple questions, I just want to comment on some of the things that I've heard today. I don't claim to be a high-level thinker in the banking world or a nation-leading economist, but I am a common-sense farmer from southern Minnesota. And if you look at the math problem that we've had in agriculture, this math problem hasn't happened overnight. And if you look at bankruptcies, typically they don't happen on the heels of years of success. They've happened on the heels of years of challenges and trials. And so if you look at the past administration and really the climate of agriculture that we are, hopefully scraping our way out of, that was an atmosphere that created the highest interest rates that we have seen on operating lines in agriculture in a generation, record high inflation, the skyrocketing costs of our inputs, and then on top of that, an ag trade deficit of which we haven't seen since the Jimmy Carter era. And so the perfect storm developed, and we have to figure out how the heck to get out of it. And so I'm proud of the work that we have done here as Republicans when we passed H.R. 1, the largest investment in the farm safety net since 2002. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. So in H.R. 1, and as you've emphasized today, crop insurance is farmers' #1 risk management tool, and they work as they work to produce the highest quality, most affordable food supply in the world. And included in H.R. 1 was my bipartisan legislation, the Farmer Act. This bill increased the premium support for higher levels of crop insurance coverage, including the supplemental coverage option and the enhanced coverage option. Can you speak to how these updates will enhance affordability at the farm gate, reduce that input side of the equation, and how it can reduce the need for future ad hoc disaster assistance, as Congressman Johnson had previously talked about?
Yes, I think, and thank you for the question. I do believe that the enhancements to crop insurance that were a part of the Working Families Tax Cuts Act were critically important. Another provision that was related to crop insurance was the opportunity for new and beginning farmers to have the advantages of being a new and beginning farmer extended from 5 years to 10 years. And if we think about the average age of a farmer being nearly 60, that next generation of agriculturalists is critically important to our industry and critically important to the country. But back to your question, I do absolutely believe that the lower premium opportunity, the opportunity to purchase higher percentage of coverage of the farmer's individual guarantee is critical. And obviously we don't have all the numbers in, but I think when RMA has the opportunity to capture all of the numbers of all of the policies and the percentage of coverage that farmers were purchasing, I think we're going to see that it resonated with farmers as well. And I think we're going to see a much higher percent of much higher percentage coverage.
I appreciate that, and I would just ask from your perch, from your opinion, do farmers that are purchasing those crop insurance tools hope to use them?
100% not.
Right.
I was a farmer until this year. I can't farm now while I'm doing this job as the undersecretary. And writing out that check for my crop insurance premium sometimes was painful, but I was always better off financially if I did not receive an indemnity from crop insurance.
Yeah, and I've been hearing from the farmers that I represent in southern Minnesota that the work that we did in H.R. 1 to make that crop insurance risk management tool more affordable, covering at a higher rate, has been a good opportunity when they're talking on the front end of their business, the operating note with the banker, but also it allows them to make better educated decisions on the marketing side. And so that more security that we have provided hopefully creates opportunities for our farmers to start hitting singles and doubles and seeing that market opportunity, while we also have to continue to work on the input side. You talked about the young and beginning farmers. Average age of farmers, 58 years old. I mean, we have a strong need for us to think about that next generation. Beyond the crop insurance piece, can you talk a little bit about, from the USDA's perspective, of other young and new beginning farmer type policies, and anything that we can do here in Congress to help really emphasize that part of the conversation that needs to have? We need to think ahead here, not react.
Absolutely. I had the opportunity yesterday over at USDA to meet with the Iowa Pork Producers Association Young Leaders Program. And there was a young man who had indicated to me that he had purchased crop insurance using the advantages of being a new and beginning farmer. He had a farm ownership loan that he had gotten through Farm Service Agency to purchase a small farm. He had used Farm Service Agency loans to build a pig barn to do contract feeding. That loan was through the Farm Service Agency. He said if it had not been for the provisions that give advantages to new and beginning farmers, he likely wouldn't have been doing that.
Thank you for your service. Thanks for being here. And Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Now recognize Dr. Adams for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Mr. Undersecretary for being here. Over the past several months, USDA has made a series of significant announcements affecting the conservation program this committee oversees. In December of 2025, the department announced a new $700 million regenerative agriculture pilot program funded not through new authorization, but by redirecting $400 million from the Environmental Quality Incentives Program and $300 million from the Conservative Stewardship Program. This pilot was not authorized by H.R. 1, yet it requires every state to set aside a quarter of its environmental quality incentives program and conservative stewardship program allocations to support it. And if you put that in perspective, for my home state of North Carolina, in fiscal year 2025, Natural Resources Conservation Service invested $23.2 million in North Carolina through the Environmental Quality Incentives Program alone to help our farmers carry out conservation practices. A 25% set aside means a meaningful share of those dollars, and the comparable share of conservation stewardship program funding will now be redirected to a pilot program that didn't exist 8 months ago and that the Congress never explicitly authorized. These are not small administrative adjustments. They represent real changes in how conservation dollars reach producers and how long-term partnerships are honored or unwound. Producers, conservation districts, and partner organizations across the country have had to adapt quickly and often with only weeks before an announcement and an application deadline. And so our job today is to better understand the implementation process and the accountability behind these decisions. We want to know how practices were chosen, funding decisions were made, and what happened to commitments already underway, and what producers and this committee can expect going forward. So my first question concerns the Regenerative Agriculture Pilot Program itself. In North Carolina, about 15% of the Environmental Quality Incentives Program and Conservation Stewardship Program funding supported at least one of the 15 practices on the approved list. And that means that we're doing our job in North Carolina. And so, Mr. Fordyce, by requiring every state to set aside 25% of its EQIP and CSP allocations for this pilot program, how much existing producer demand for standard equip and CSP practices is being displaced?
Well, Congresswoman, that is a good question, and so the regenerative pilot program, the idea behind putting EQIP and CSP into the regenerative pilot program was not done lightly. There has been a number of different organizations that have asked about a focus on improving soil health and a focus on whole farm planning. And those are really the two pillars that are in the regenerative pilot program. And so the idea to use 15 existing conservation practice standards to accomplish that was a decision that we made, and it has really been overwhelmingly positive by the conservation folks that we work with.
So what would a 25% set aside have meant for the farmers in North Carolina who applied for traditional conservation practices during that time? And are they now competing for a smaller pool of standard funding because of this?
No, ma'am, I don't believe they are, because what we're doing is folks that have inquired and have an interest in EQIP or CSP, some of the other conservation practice standards these are the types of things that they are interested in.
Okay, so this $700 million announcement came at the same time USDA cut other farmer support programs like Farm to School, Farm to Food Bank. So can you tell us how a small regenerative farmer is supposed to make up for the loss of school and food bank contracts using funds from this pilot program?
So I would say that that the program is size neutral. Small farmers, mid-sized farmers can utilize these programs to enhance soil health and to engage in whole farm conservation planning.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for your responses, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Now recognize Mr. Feenstra for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and for holding this hearing. And I also want to thank Undersecretary Fordyce for joining us and for your long dedication and service to our nation's farmers throughout your career. I'm very impressed. I come from the second largest ag district in the country, and crop insurance is very important to our district with corn and soybeans. And it's worked so important to have this public-private partnership. I used to sell crop insurance through the bank, and I understood how important it was. And it wasn't just a safety net, it was actually a marketing, risk management decisions that farmers made to be successful through the programs. So earlier this year, we passed the historic investments to strengthen that partnership and expand the affordable risk of this management tool, including a provision that I was very proud to lead, and that was to support young and beginning farmers trying to get the start in agriculture. We lowered the cost through crop insurance to do this. I want to recognize the work USDA and RMA did to quickly implement these changes so producers could actually take these benefits for the 2026 reinsurance year. I just wondered, could you just talk a little bit about how important this was in implementing this crop insurance improvements and maintaining strong public-private partnerships and for farmers to have reliable and timely support that you are creating? Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yes, sir. Good question. And I do believe that the provisions that were in the Working Families Tax Cut Act related to crop insurance were all positive. Yeah. And I think that the numbers bear that out. For example, ECO and SCO subscription rates have more than doubled. Those are basically the add-on products that get the producer a higher percentage guarantee. So yes, they're very positive. They're getting a better risk management product with a smaller investment out of their pocket. So yes, that's incredibly important. I would also say you referenced the public-private partnership. In my notion, that is one of the great examples. We talk about public-private partnerships all the time. That should be the gold standard. That should be what we point to and say other things can happen like this. And I would also add that our nearly, I think 17,000 crop insurance agents across the country are also advocates for those for their customers. They know the FSA programs. They know certainly their crop insurance programs, and they are advocates and advisors to the farmers that they serve.
And you nailed it. I mean, when I was selling crop insurance, it was together working with a farmer to see what worked best for them. And each farm was different, and each had their different amounts that they needed. I mean, it all worked so well. So I want to talk, one of the biggest challenges facing farmers today is a combination of lower commodity prices and higher input costs that remain obviously well above historical averages. Our farm safety net has traditionally focused on price and production risk. However, in recent programs like ECAP and Farm Bridge Assistance Program, we recognize the modern farm risk that increasingly is driven by margin pressure and cost production. Now, these are ad hoc assistance programs, which I have no problem with, and they should never replace the predictable safety net programs. But these programs sort of highlight the risk of agriculture and how it's evolving, continuing to evolve. Can you talk about your role and the future role in USDA when it comes to commodity programs like this to better address the farm economy and maintaining the market-oriented fiscal responsibility of the safety net?
Yes, absolutely. Again, provisions in the Working Families Tax Cut Act related to reference prices, an additional 30 million base acres that will be allocated across the country specific to the ARC and PLC safety net programs is also critically important. I would also say that that when we think about ad hoc assistance, sometimes that is necessary. You referenced input costs, you referenced commodity prices. The U.S. farmer is just really, really good at producing, and in my mind, our commodity price levels that we're at today are a supply and demand situation. We grew an enormous corn crop last year, yet corn exports are almost at a record high. So, and domestic use of corn is also at historic highs. So we're growing a lot. We've got to find markets for those, and we continue to do that.
Well, thank you again for being here. Thanks for all you do, and I yield back. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr. Tokuda from Hawaii for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Fordyce, I have a number of questions, mainly surrounding small family farms. Now, I know here we are talking about the $11 billion in bridge funding, but I do also recognize that a vast majority of those funds are skewed towards large-scale crop operations, given that I believe there was about 500,000 applications that were approved for this particular funding, but the distribution was based on a strict per-acre model, which favors larger farmers. And the cap was increased, and I know someone argued that it was a nominal cap increase, but large-scale operations also have the ability to stack caps, which small, medium-sized mom-and-pop shops don't have that ability to do that. When you stack caps, the increase per farm operation can be quite significant in what they benefited from that came out of the OBBA. So I guess my fundamental question to you is, of the $11 billion in this bridge funding, and I do know that we had a $1.625 billion in specialty crop funding as well, what percentage of that actually went to small farmers? 86% of farm operations in the United States are small family farms. What percentage would you say went to small farmers, and how much of that money went to small to medium-sized farm operations?
I don't know that I'm going to be able to answer your question, Congresswoman. I don't know what your definition is of small and medium, and I don't mean to be, but I don't know what is it by acre, by sales, and I wouldn't have that number anyway.
I believe the USDA does have a definition of a small farm operation, does it not?
There is a definition as a farm, and that's sales of $1,000 in commodities.
I believe typically when we're looking at small farm operations, it might be $350,000 or more per year of annual sales. I believe that was one statistic I saw in the economic research service studies that the USDA has. So do we have a breakdown of how much small farms received out of the $11 billion in this bridge assistance funding, as well as for the specialty crops?
We would have some sort of a breakdown, and we can certainly get that to you. I don't know the answer to that today.
But would you agree that based upon how the money was given out, this was largely skewed towards large farms, large farm row crop operations versus small family farms that exist in all 50 states and territories? Would
Well,
you say that a vast majority would have likely gone towards these operations?
I would say that our programs, whether they're congressionally authorized programs or ad hoc programs, they're size neutral with caps. So smaller farms that have a payment, they're eligible for a certain amount of dollars. They didn't hit the cap, so they get 100% of what they were eligible for. Larger farms, on the other hand, may be eligible for higher payments, but they are limited at that cap.
But as I was mentioning, there is that cap, but large corporations and a lot of these non-family farms that we're talking about, these row crop, commodity crops, they do stack caps. I think when you do go back and do the research, you'll find that they have the ability to draw down a significant amount more of these federal dollars versus your small, medium-sized farmers that exist, again, in every single one of our states. And so my big concern is that small family farms are getting screwed. 86% of the agriculture producers in this country are small family farms. They're the ones who are dying on the vine, who are questioning whether or not they leave this to their children. And while this is a lot of money to celebrate, how much of it is actually going to these farms to keep them not just alive, but to consider continuing on businesses? The connection I have to this is at the same time we cut $187 billion in SNAP. Would you not agree? SNAP money feeds local small to medium-sized family farms because they take these SNAP dollars and they reinvest it into rural, local economy, small farms. Would we not agree? SNAP dollars aren't buying from row crops, from sugar or soybeans or corn. They're buying from local farms. Would you agree with that?
I would say that that small farms have a number of markets
Would
that
you
they
not
sell
say
into.
that when we take a look to your own research at USDA, economists have shown at the USDA SNAP spending supports ag inputs at the local level. So when we cut $187 billion for SNAP, are we not cutting out 1.25 more on return when you take a look at the return on investment from local farms and local small family producers in every single state?
USDA and the agencies that I oversee support all farmers, Congresswoman.
If we could have, and I'll ask for this question, Mr. Chair, I'd like to know of the $187 billion in SNAP cuts, what are the estimated losses to the local rural economy and local small farmers? Thank you, Mr. Fordyce, for being here.
Thank you.
I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Generally's time has expired. I now recognize gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Mann, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Undersecretary Fordyce, for being here today. Thank you for all that you and so many great folks at the USDA are doing to help our great farmers and ranchers all over the country feed us and keep us safe. I would just say, you know, as we're celebrating our 250th birthday here in a couple of weeks, I just think we've got to remember that we've been the free, prosperous country we have been for many reasons, but one of the biggest is which we have never had to rely on another country for our food supply, which is why getting the policy right matters, not just for our farmers, but of course for our entire country, and you all are at front and center of that, and I appreciate that. Great catching up with you back in Kansas last week. Thanks for spending time in the state. Enjoyed having you specifically in my district last week. As you know, my district, we have a lot of wheat, a lot of beef, a lot of sorghum, a lot of corn, soybeans as well. My question's for you. First, I was excited to hear about the new pilot program that USDA introduced to modernize acreage reporting and improve its efficiency for producers, something producers have been talking to us about for a long, long time. I think there's 11 pilot programs going on right now. Could you share more about the program, how it's being incorporated into the new One Farmer, One File initiative, and what the outlook is for the future?
Yes, Congressman, and yes, it was good to see you in Kansas last week. You do have vast swaths of country and a lot of agriculture in your district for sure. I might get overexcited about this modernized acreage reporting. It is a long time coming. Currently, those folks that submit acreage reports, the way we do it at FSA right now is we have a photocopied map that shows that farm. And then we hand that farmer a pencil and we ask them to write in that field the crop and the plant date And they do that for every field on that farm. Then they hand the paper map back to the program analyst, and then he or she then has to do the data entry to enter that in.
Has to be a better way.
There is a better way, and we're on it. You know, in my opening testimony, I mentioned 11 counties that are pilot counties, 11 counties in 11 different states that are pilot counties. And what we've determined is not only is it a much better experience for the farmer, it is a quicker opportunity to do those acreage reports, but it is also it reduces the amount of data entry that our program analysts at FSA have to do. And it's based on a geospatial mapping platform. So we're using a modern geospatial map that is interactive. Farmers, if they're not farming that field exactly like that, they can change the boundaries, they can do whatever. They literally will tap on or click on that field. It'll bring up a crop code. They'll select the crop. Then it'll bring up a calendar. They'll select the plant date. And this is phase one. We have other phases that are gonna progress into accepting precision ag data to populate these acreage reports. But when they click on that and they click the crop and they click the date, then it's entered. There is no data entry that happens after that. That's the key, in my mind. That's the key, is where you have more accurate acreage reporting without double, triple data entry. And it is going to be a great thing for our staff and our farmers.
One farmer, one file is fantastic. And then the next year you just go and update, you know, the fields are already in there, so you just update what crop or what the plan is.
There will be defaults. After that foundational work, there'll be defaults. If you're a corn soybean rotation, this is always corn this year, soybeans this year. It'll pre-populate that, but obviously we give the farmer the opportunity to make sure that that's correct. And so we'll have an opportunity. If farmers want to come into the county office and do this exercise every year, we'll use that modernized platform to do it. If they want to do it on their phone, they want to do it on some other digital device, phase two will allow for that to happen. And you know, I use my family as an example. My son's 30, I'm 60, my dad's 93. My dad will never use this. He's going to go to the county office. I can do it either way. My son, who's 30, will demand at some point to do his work with USDA virtually and digitally.
Yeah, welcome improvement. I think producers I know in Kansas are really excited about this and the opportunities that it's going to be. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, I yield back the balance of my time. And thank you again, Undersecretary, for being here.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Wazinski, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Craig. Thank you, Undersecretary Fordyce, for being here. I appreciate it. I want to ask about crop insurance as well, and the risk pool in particular. In the Midwest, we have some of the lowest loss ratios in the country, meaning farmers are paying in significantly more than they're getting out. Nationally, the loss ratio hovers right around 1.0. But that's not really the reality at a regional level. Illinois is actually far below that, the district I represent in central and southern Illinois, with a loss ratio below 0.4. It was previously mentioned today that increased premium support will help ease the pain for our farmers, but this increase won't make the difference between premiums and indemnity payments for farmers in states like mine. And the issue within the crop insurance program is only compounded by the pain our farmers are feeling by the president's most recent trade wars. If farmers in low-risk, low-loss ratio states like mine reach a point where the financial burden of participating no longer makes sense for their operation and they start walking away, what happens to the overall risk pool?
That is a great question. That is a great question. And I know that RMA, they monitor that very closely. And I've heard the same thing that you just explained when I travel to Illinois. I believe you and I had a conversation at the Farm Progress Show last year, and I think this topic may have come up.
Yeah.
You know, we monitor that from an RMA perspective. But I do believe that you know, with the provisions in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, lower premiums, higher guarantees. It's a better risk management product across the board, lower premiums, and just I would say the peace of mind of having that risk management, supporting that farming operation in the case of adverse weather is going to continue. I think folks are going to continue to purchase crop insurance.
One thing I'd like to better understand is how, premiums are calculated. And I think one of the questions Congressman Sorensen might have had, and it sounded like you might be doing a study on this, is if you'd be open once that study's completed to maybe briefing some of us that have these types of questions on premiums.
Yes, I think we can do that.
Okay, that would be great. I'd like to shift gears now to talking about base acres, and specifically making the case for a mandatory base acre update. The last mandatory base acre update was in 1985. American agriculture, I think we can all agree, has changed pretty significantly over the last 40 years. This mismatch matters since we're expecting the safety net to support the current farm economy, and right now it just doesn't. Farmers are making planting decisions against a program structure that is 40 years out of date. The last reconciliation package took a step with a voluntary one-time update of up to 30 million acres, and I don't dismiss that. But voluntary and capped is not the same as fixing the underlying problem. Here's what I think deserves more attention. A mandatory comprehensive base acre update could actually save federal government money. Before these changes, the savings estimated was around $3 billion. After the changes with the reference price changes now baked in, that number could be closer to $11 billion. And both figures are expected to grow. So my question is, does USDA believe a mandatory base acre update would better align the safety net with the modern farm economy? And does the department see a path to help making the fiscal case for getting it done in our next farm bill?
So let me answer that like the first part of the question first. I don't know that we've done the analysis of what a mandatory base acre update would look like. That's something certainly that I could visit with the chief economist and the folks in the chief economist's office about. I do think you make a good point. Base update is different than allocating new base related to planning history. So I think, from my perspective, I would like to see what that looks like if, in fact, that would lower the score for safety net programs to do a base update. I think that would be interesting to know.
Thank you for being open to that, and I'll yield back my time. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Taylor, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman, for hosting this hearing, and thank you, Undersecretary Fordyce, for being with us today. It's been very helpful to this point. I appreciate it very much. Almost a year ago, President Trump signed the largest investment in our agriculture sector in history. The One Big Beautiful Bill was a transformational piece of legislation that, in the end, will help all of the 11,000 family farms in the district I represent, which is the neediest in Ohio by a wide margin. So I've been pleased to see the progress the USDA has made in implementing this $66 billion investment. There are many wins in the bill for businesses, families, and farmers, but I want to focus on beginning farmers for a moment. Nearly 50% of all farmland will transfer hands in the next 20 years, so it's critical that we focus on getting the next generation into the business. Undersecretary, could you talk about the challenges that beginning farmers face in getting into the business and how some of the investments we made in the One Big Beautiful Bill will help that generation get into farming?
Yes, absolutely, and I alluded to it earlier with an earlier question about the importance of new and beginning farmers entering into agriculture. We've got to have that next group of folks coming in to feed, fuel, and clothe not only this country but the world, and we've done that as a country very well for a long time, and so I will answer that, but I would first say that the young folks in agriculture that I interact with are amazing people. They're smarter than I was at that age, and it's really interesting to hear them talk about the economics of agriculture, the business of agriculture, the public policy of agriculture. And to me, when I think about someone entering the industry just how capital intensive agriculture is. And it has been for a long time. Access to land is certainly, can sometimes, you know, be something that is just too costly. So our farm loan programs through the Farm Service Agency, we have special provisions specific to new and beginning farmers, where we actually chunk off a part of our loan volume. It can only go to new and beginning farmers for direct farm ownership, direct farm operating expenses. And it is highly subscribed by new and beginning farmers. The ability for new and beginning farmers to access risk management products through RMA and through crop insurance, extending that the lower premium options for those new and beginning farmers from 5 years to 10 years is huge, right? If you can double your eligibility, time of eligibility, I think that's critically important. And a number of other things, whether it's directly related to language in the bill for new and beginning farmers, they also take advantage of the other provisions, the increase in reference prices, the increase in marketing assistance loan prices, the 30 million additional base acres. So I think we have a number of things that are focused on new and beginning farmers at USDA, and certainly there were provisions within the Working Families Tax Cuts Act that move that way as well.
Do you do any tracking on the rate at which new people are entering the field of agriculture? And if so, are we seeing an uptick? As you described, seems to be more interest, and there are certainly programs to encourage it, but are we seeing any changes in those numbers if that's being tracked?
You know, I don't know that we're tracking it. You know, the National Agriculture Statistics Service, NASS, I'm sure is tracking that. That would be something I think certainly interesting to look at. I can't answer that with any surety today, but that would be a good thing to know.
I have another question that's not going to be answerable in a minute. I'll submit that to you later. I appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields. Now recognize Mr. Figures for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Undersecretary Fordyce. Thank you for being here today. While investments in FPAC that we're here to discuss today were certainly meaningful for many producers, we cannot move forward without acknowledging the incredibly harmful pay-for that came at the expense of food security in communities across this country. You know, this Congress has spent far too much time robbing Peter to pay Paul, leaving nearly 82,000 people in my state of Alabama without the support of SNAP, including more than 23,000 children. And that's after we repeatedly heard throughout this process that no children will be impacted, that children are exempt. So whether intentional or not, exactly what we warned would happen is certainly happening across the state of Alabama. And as I'm sure you are aware, the state of Alabama is not one of the more affluent states in this nation. I have an individual median income across my district of about $32,000, which means about half the people in my district make less than $32,000. And so the SNAP program is certainly something that is more than just meaningful in my district. And that number right now, that 23,000 children, 82,000 people that have lost SNAP support, that number reflects only the impacts we've seen to this point and not the full consequences once these cuts are completely implemented. And look, farmers have been asking for a stronger farm safety net, and you know, we have done some work to strengthen commodity programs, expand crop insurance options, increase support for beginning ranchers and farmers, some of which you just referenced again there, and invested in additional resources into conservation programs. Those are all improvements that producers have long advocated for and farmers have long sought, and were certainly necessary and certainly things that I support. But we cannot move forward without recognizing the real people who are paying the price, and that's the children who didn't decide the circumstances they were born into and yet go hungry, the local grocers who relied on SNAP dollars, because as you know, look, SNAP dollars are not something that people can store in the bank. They can't invest SNAP dollars. They're spent, and they're only spent at grocery stores, and those grocery stores are primarily stocked with food that is purchased from materials that are produced on our farms in Alabama and across this country, even in your home state of Missouri. And state budgets will obviously feel the ramifications of this at the end of the day once they're forced to make impossible choices related to the cost sharing. But today we're here to talk about things that H.R. 1 did for FPAC, and farmers in my district are still calling for help even after these investments and after USDA's bridge payments. While we've made improvements to existing programs, the underlying struggles haven't gone away. Export markets are still feeling the impacts of tariffs, and I want to come back to that. And some of those markets may never return to what they once were, a reliable lifeline that helped keep family farms afloat. Input costs remain incredibly high. Fuel costs are up. Fertilizer costs are up. Markets remain volatile, and producers continue to face uncertainty every time they make decisions about planning, borrowing, or expanding their operations. So yes, we can all agree that something is better than nothing for farmers facing extraordinary challenges, but strengthening the farm safety net, expanding conservation opportunities, and improving crop insurance are meaningful steps, but farmers deserve credit for fighting to make those improvements a reality. We cannot keep shifting money around every few years and calling it a solution. We cannot continue to ask farmers to rely on bridge payments and emergency assistance while the same economic pressures continue year after year. Our job isn't simply to just help farmers survive, especially until just the next season. It is to create the kind of long-term stability that allows them to plan, invest, and run the type of operation that is worthy of passing down to the next generation. Undersecretary, let me ask you this: in your opinion, have the tariffs been good to farmers?
Well, I think that the president's approach to trade has, in my mind, has been a positive to the country. It has offered an opportunity to open up some new markets for agricultural products, and I would also say that from the U.S. Trade Rep and others, the Undersecretary for Trade at USDA, that in every trade agreement that's negotiated, agriculture has to be a part of it.
Well, understood, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I want to
No, sir,
be able to get
understand.
another question. What we hear about markets in Alabama, we have a lot of peanut farmers. I know you have a soybean background yourself. Soybean markets, as you know, we saw exports to China dry up almost 76% over the last year, and I understand some deals are in place to make some of that come back. But China is going to Brazil. They're standing up markets and making investments in Brazil for not just soybeans, but for peanuts and for other crops as well. So my concern is those markets aren't coming back to Alabama, that they're gone. They're drying up over these tariff policies. So yes, it may have opened up some degree of a market in some respect, but we're losing ground permanently in the state of Alabama, and it's my hope that I can work with your office to take steps and push forward legislation that will actually mitigate that harm as much as we possibly can.
Yes, sir, Congressman.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Mr. Messmer for 5
Thank you,
minutes.
Mr. Chairman. Undersecretary Fordyce, you have a lot on your plate at FPAC because of the work that has come out of this committee. So thank you for taking the time to share your testimony this morning. I appreciate the work you're doing to ensure our farmers are supported, especially through implementation of H.R. 1. I want to draw your attention to the Poultry Insurance Pilot Program, which was authorized through H.R. 1. As you know, the pilot would help poultry producers address increased energy costs due to extreme weather events. Undersecretary, does the Risk Management Agency intend to ensure this pilot serves not just broilers and laying hens, but the rest of the poultry industry?
Yes, Congressman, that is a good question. We fully understand that there's a 2-year timeline to get that done, so that product needs to be developed by July 4th, 2027. The RMA and the board are currently looking at options that can fit the bill for that product, and we will meet that timeline.
Okay, very good. Under H.R. 1, the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation is charged with setting up the pilot program in top producing poultry states. In what states does the corporation plan to conduct this pilot program? And I would hope Indiana might be included, which has over 20 million turkeys raised just last year. So any decisions on that?
So I don't know that we've made any final decisions related to that, but certainly Indiana would be under consideration.
Thank you. I was pleased to see yesterday's announcement of $310 million invested in the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. My district is home to one of the largest Navy bases, the largest Navy base in the continental U.S., the Navy Surface Warfare Center, Crane. And Crane sits within the Southern Indiana Sentinel Landscape, or SISL, which has been successful in both improving access to USDA conservation programs for private landowners and establishing easement buffers around military installations. In 2023, SISL's key partners applied for RCPP funds for a project within that landscape. While their application was approved in 2023, funding was never allocated. Does NRCS intend to smooth the application process for projects that previously received approval but will now have to resubmit an application?
So I don't know what the final decision has been made related to the RCPPs that were partially through the process and then weren't finished. But certainly we'll have a conversation with the chief related to that, and we can get back to you on that.
Okay. Any potential for the USDA's One Farmer, One File effort to apply to organizations like the CISL Partners?
That's possible, yes.
Okay, very good. Indiana proudly leads the nation in soil conservation. As a result, demand for technical assistance in the Hoosier State is exceptionally high. Indiana's NRCS staff work incredibly hard to meet producers with conservation plans that fit their needs, but as demand for NRCS programs has grown, Indiana's pool of NRCS technical assistance experts has not. Can you shed some light on how NRCS plans to increase farmer access to credentialed technical service providers as our producers continue to steward their lands?
Yes, I think all options are on the table from a technical assistance perspective. Certainly, we provide a good bit of technical assistance that comes directly from NRCS employees. We also have a very robust relationship with partners that also are providing technical assistance. And then the technical assistance provider network is another vehicle that we can invest in and provide technical assistance for farmers.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. I yield back.
Thank you, gentleman. Gentleman yields back. Now recognize gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Vindman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig. Mr. Fordyce, thank you for being here today. As we have been discussing today, H.R. 1 made substantial changes to a number of farm and conservation programs. I continue to believe those changes should have been debated in the context of a comprehensive farm bill rather than a partisan reconciliation package, particularly one that came at the expense of nutrition assistance for millions of families. I also recognize that farmers are counting on the USDA to successfully implement the programs Congress enacted. That is why I want to focus my questions today on whether the department has the capacity and resources necessary to deliver on those commitments. USDA has experienced not only a significant loss of staff across the entire department, but it's also in the middle of a massive reorganization within the farm production and conservation mission area. So, Mr. Fordyce, do you believe the FPAC currently has the staffing and technical capacity necessary to implement these changes efficiently and provide timely service to producers? And are there particular staffing gaps or operational challenges that concern you as implementation continues?
Yes, Congresswoman, thank you for the question. I think that by and large, I think our agencies are meeting the mission. They are delivering on the promise that we make to American agriculture. But we will have locations. We will have county offices that are having staffing challenges at this point. The Natural Resources Conservation Service, they actually have a hiring plan. They are currently advertising and hiring folks, not only at that local level, but more at the regional level, engineers, architects, those kinds of folks that are required to move these projects forward through NRCS. FSA, our constraint today on staffing is budget. And we do recognize that we do have county offices that are not staffed to the level that we would like to see them. So we hope that we get some relief in the appropriations process for FY27 to be able to hire staff at FSA.
Well, thank you for that, because you mentioned in this hearing that the department will be advertising and hiring for NRCS, and 22% of the NRCS staff was cut. Can you explain the strategy of firing and rehiring staff?
Congresswoman, I think the majority of those folks left through DRP, Deferred Retirement Program. That was a voluntary program. That was the choice of the employee, was the best decision for them and their family. And so, you know, if those choices were made by the employee, then we will do our best to hire back folks that can meet the mission.
Thank you. I'm also concerned about the capacity and services changes at USDA that they're going to impact not only farmers who participate in these programs, but also USDA's ability to ensure that underserved producers, particularly beginning farmers, smaller operations and producers who have not had long-standing relationship with USDA offices will continue to be left behind. So can you share with us how you are ensuring your implementation efforts reach a broad range of producers that that the benefits of these program changes are accessible in operations of all sizes and backgrounds?
Yes, Congresswoman, I am actually pretty happy with our outreach program at FSA, and it's really at all levels. Whether it's the state executive director at the state FSA, the outreach coordinators within those states, young, new and beginning farmer coordinators. There are a number of outreach meetings. Certainly, a good relationship with local media, local newspapers, local radio stations that they engage with on a very regular basis. I've heard clips and I've seen some of the work that the outreach teams do across the country. Can we do more? I think we can always do more. And it would be my desire to do more. Our programs are open to everyone of any size, small, medium, large farmers, and we want to make sure that everyone is aware of the programs that are available in our mission area.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the policies we are discussing here today took place outside of a farm bill where they should have been considered and at the expense of the largest cut to SNAP in our nation's history. For decades, the Farm Bill Coalition has been built on a simple understanding. Farmers need a strong safety net, and families, including those who have fallen on hard times, deserve access to food. Those priorities were never in competition with one another. They were partners in a shared commitment to rural communities, producers, and working families. So as we move forward, I hope this committee can recommit itself to the bipartisan foundation that has sustained farm policy for generations. The success of crop insurance, ARC, PLC, disaster assistance, and conservation programs is not in conflict with the success of SNAP. Farmers deserve certainty, families deserve food security, and American people deserve a farm bill that delivers both. And thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Now we recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Valadeo, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Undersecretary. I want to thank you for being here today and for your testimony. Crop insurance is clearly a valuable tool with enrollment hitting an all-time high. However, specialty crop participation continues to lag significantly behind other crops. How has your administration worked to expand USDA's insurance programs to better cover America's specialty crops?
Congressman, that is a great question. And let me say first that Administrator Swanson, when she became the administrator of the Risk Management Agency, very soon after she started, conducted a series of specialty crop roundtables. And those roundtables, the participants were specialty crop farmers, crop insurance agents that serve regions of the country that support specialty crop farmers, to learn more about what is the gap, where are we not meeting the needs of specialty crop farmers. You know, the federal crop insurance system has been around for 30 years. They had their birthday a couple of months ago, and certainly for most of that time, it's been in support of what we would refer to as Title I crops. And so there is a learning curve, and I fully admit that there's a learning curve, but there's certainly a desire to understand more about where is the gap, what are we not doing, what can we be doing to better support specialty crop farmers. And I would also say that in some cases the administrator has expanded coverage. So if we did, for example, have a product for, I don't know, I'll say apples as just an example, but we maybe only made that available in certain counties. We've expanded those coverage areas, but we still have work to do, and I'll be the first to admit that we still have work to do in providing effective risk management tools for specialty crop farmers.
So I don't know if there was an answer in that, but it is one that has a lot of concern in a district like mine, and I think there's like 15% of specialty crops are covered, so it's really far behind, and it is something we need to keep working on. Whole farm revenue protection has been the catch-all for diverse farms with multiple commodities. It is also one of the risk management agency's best tools to cover these specialized operations. Unfortunately, it remains underused due to extensive paperwork requirements and a lack of available policies from insurers. What more can FSA and RMA do to encourage insurers to offer whole farm policies?
That's another good question. I think that whole farm certainly is an option, but you are correct. It does require a lot of management from the producer, but also from the agency. Just the whole farm policy application. And I know that RMA, they're looking at ways to hopefully streamline that, make that more amenable to folks that want to choose, or maybe that's the only option for them is the whole farm coverage.
All right. With concerns about the New World screwworm growing in the southern U.S., what programs does FSA or RMA have or plan to offer to provide dairy or beef operations protection against this new threat?
So NRCS have a number, and I can't give you the exact number of conservation practice standards that would go toward helping producers either from an observation and a monitoring standpoint, brush management, some forage management kind of programs to hopefully reduce the likely positive habitat for New World screwworm. And then on the FSA side, we do have some programs. We are analyzing right now what might work through an indemnity program. We've not made a final decision on that yet, but certainly looking at that.
All right, thank you. And then FSA, right now, American farmers are experiencing high operational expenses that threaten their bottom line. For many, sale prices remain stagnant, while input costs like fuel, fertilizer, and seeds continue to increase. How are rising input costs and tighter farm margins affecting demand for FSA loan programs? What are you hearing from producers seeking credit?
I think that FSA loan programs are always going to be an option for folks. We have seen maybe a slight tick up in the subscription rate of FSA farm loans, whether that's direct loans or guaranteed loans. I had an opportunity to visit with American Bankers Association some weeks ago. And they very much value the partnership that we provide with them through commercial lending.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Now recognize Mr. Venman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. So this spring, thank you for coming here, Mr. Fordyce. This spring, Virginia was impacted by a devastating frost and freeze event that impacted orchards, vineyards, and crops across the Commonwealth. A month ago, on May 27th, Virginia submitted a request to USDA Secretary Rollins for a secretarial designation of disaster for frost and freeze damage in the Commonwealth. I raised this issue directly with the Secretary when she testified before this committee, and she promised to review Virginia's request as quickly as possible. We're still waiting for that approval request from the Secretary's office almost a month later. Mr. Fordyce, as the only Virginian on this committee, the Commonwealth's farmers can't wait much longer for this critical support. Now, there's a lot of rhetoric of support for farmers, farmers first, but I just want to make sure the actions are consistent with that rhetoric. Can you provide an update on the status of that approval?
Yes, Congressman, I can. FSA is finalizing that disaster designation. There are 15 counties in Virginia that are included in that disaster designation, and that Virginia will be receiving that disaster declaration this week.
Thank you. That's wonderful news. With the let's see. All right, so I'd like to turn to the question of the federal workforce at USDA. NRCS experienced a massive drop in its workforce, losing nearly 3,000 employees, or almost a quarter of its workforce. Farmers and local communities did not have anyone to call for conservation support, and local counties lost knowledgeable, helpful field staff, but the Office of the Secretary grew by 18%. FSA lost 21% of its staff. More than a third of the local FSA offices began the year with reduced headcount. On top of that, a survey by AFGE found that 76% of USDA staff working in and around the National Capital Region do not plan to relocate with USDA and plan to leave their jobs instead. In the face of all these cuts and staff losses, it's not like life in farm country has gotten any better. How is USDA going to retain an expert workforce with these types of numbers and ongoing staff cuts? How can farmers in Virginia, which the USDA is moving away from, expect good service from FSA and NRCS?
I've said a couple of times during the hearing that the real heroes in our mission area are the folks that are working in those county offices that are delivering programs where the rubber meets the road. And I value them so much. Throughout my career, I've worked directly with local NRCS and local FSA people, and so I want to say that up front. I think that from an NRCS and FSA staffing perspective, we are on our way back up the other direction. NRCS, they're advertising positions not only to fill positions in local county offices, but also more specialized positions like engineers, like archaeologists, which are critical to deliver the mission. So NRCS is hiring. Their target hiring number is to get back up to around 9,500 for the total of the agency. FSA, on the other hand, they're hiring as well, but they're hiring to attrition, and they're hiring to attrition because the constraint is budgetary. So our hope is through the appropriations process in the next fiscal year that we will get additional appropriations for staffing for Farm Service Agency.
So I'd like to point out that a couple of times I've heard you talk about the DRP, the Deferred Resignation or Retirement Programs. These are government-administered programs that the government has announced incentives in order to get people to leave. And so you talk about people leaving for their own, it fit their lifestyle, they want to leave. That was an opportunity provided by the government, and now we're in a position from digging out of that hole in order to build up staffing, make sure we can support our farmers. So it's not, it's voluntary to the extent that it was offered as an incentive, and it's not that it just happened. It was an act of nature. People decided to leave. So that is just not consistent with the needs of farmers and what farmers are facing. And I hope in the future as we go forward that we're a little bit more diligent, deliberate in how we plan for staff and make sure we retain that experience and that expertise that our farmers rely on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Dr. Baird is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. And Mr. Undersecretary, we really appreciate you being here. You mentioned in your introduction about food security as national security, and I think that's a philosophy that we have around here, and it demonstrates how important meetings like this are, where we're providing the safety net for producers and farmers and ranchers, as well as a way to manage risk management. So having said that, my first question deals with the CRP program, one of which is the Grassland Reserve. And I would just appreciate your comments and thoughts about how we might use that Grassland Reserve, because different than some of them we've had, in that you're able to continue production and yet use the conservation programs to save our soil. So I'd be interested in your thoughts about that. It's relatively new to Indiana, to our area, as far as.
Yeah, the grassland CRP is a relatively new practice. And really, it makes a lot of sense. We will do a general CRP sign up where we're gonna take bigger chunks of land that have been cropped, or maybe they're re-enrolling that. But that was cropland that was taken out of production through the general CRP sign up. The grassland CRP, as you say, Congressman, is a working lands program. It is a conservation program that the rental rate for grasslands doesn't quite get to the level of a general CRP contract, but then it also grants the flexibility to the landowner, to the producer, to utilize that grass while also being enrolled in a conservation program.
You know, I can see how the significance of that in the western states, but you know, in Indiana, we still have a lot of cow-calf operations in parts of the state, and so all of that would be applicable. You know, in another area, I offered a bill called the TSP, or Technical Service Providers, where we can certify those people working for some of the agribusinesses and so on. And we have a lot of technology and capability there, so I would just be interested if you think, and I realize that really works with the NRCS, but I was wondering if that doesn't take a load, some of the load off the USDA and the FSA offices by having those kind of people that understand the programs, and yet we can certify them. And so I just be interested to make sure that is something feasible, or how you feel about it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, you know, from a technical service provider standpoint, you know, technical assistance is valuable, whether that comes from NRCS employees, whether that comes from one of our recognized partners that we partner with, soil and water conservation districts, you know, some of the other organizations, Ducks Unlimited and others. You know, the services that they provide from a technical assistance standpoint is critically important. But I think that certainly there is merit in what you propose, because not only are those folks, you know, working in agriculture, they can also be ambassadors for the programs as well. Not only providing technical assistance, but understanding the programs and making sure that the folks that they work with understand what they are and how they can participate.
You know, I think that's a basic point that I was interested in. They understand the program, and so that really makes an asset that they can contribute, because they do understand. And then when you look at some of the CRP programs, it does take some analysis and some effort to try to make sure which one best fits your situation. And so I think the more eyes, the legitimate eyes that you have on that, the better you utilize the programs. So I guess my last question kind of ties that all together. You know, I'm partial to Purdue University, and I expect everybody around here knows that. But anyway, stop that. But I just really think that research is our way to compete with around the world. So I'd just be interested in your thoughts about how we're working with the land-grant universities, with agribusinesses, as well as, you know, a lot more of our farmers and producers have a degree. So.
Yeah, I've said multiple times today that farmers will always do the right thing when they know what the right thing is, and they're advised through land grant, a lot of land grant university research and innovation. You know, I mean, I'm partial to Mizzou, and the land grant university there and the outreach that they do is critically important. So absolutely support the research that happens at those land grant universities and the innovation and discovery that comes out of there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your answers. You back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize Ms. Hayes from Connecticut for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Undersecretary Fordyce, for being here. I just want to follow up on the questions that were asked by Reps. Brown and Vindman about staffing, because you did mention the deferred resignation program. And as Representative Vindman said, that was an incentive that many people took. But I think it's also important to note that massive cuts and efforts made by DOGE led to a spike in resignations, and then workforce reduction initiatives and massive relocations also led to a mass exodus in key agencies that we're talking about are understaffed. So I would submit that appropriations is not the only constraint, that much of what we're dealing with is choices made by this administration that we're now trying to correct for. So I think it would have to be a really compelling argument to come back to Congress and now ask for appropriations to replace staff that was cut by the administration. And as Representative Vindman said, these weren't people who just woke up one day and decided they were ready to retire. They were responding to the pressures that were applied to them by both the agency and the efforts of DOGE. So those are all things to consider. It's not just appropriations constraints. That's not really a question, I guess, just a statement. Federal crop insurance is critical to agricultural safety nets. However, in 2022, of the 1.9 million farmers in the United States, just 19% were enrolled in crop insurance. This disproportionately affects small farms, which often cannot access insurance. My legislation, the Save Our Small Farms Act, would address the lack of a safety net for vulnerable farmers who are unfairly shut out of traditional crop insurance. H.R. 1 increased support for commodity crops like cotton through enhanced reference prices, expanded base acres, and strengthened ARC and PLC programs. I understand that those farmers have been hurting. In contrast, H.R. 1 does comparatively little for farmers growing fresh fruits and vegetables and nuts that feed American families. Specialty crop accounts for roughly 50% of the total value of U.S. crop production. Yet these farmers lack the same commodity support infrastructure. They face higher insurance barriers, and they're disproportionately shut out of safety nets entirely. The specialty crop block grant increase in H.R. 1 is welcome, but it does little to address the fundamental gap in crop insurance access for small specialty crop producers. Can you tell me what actions the department is taking outside of H.R. 1 to ensure that farmers growing fresh produce have the same level of protections as those producing commodity crops? And you can use the time if you would like to address any staffing issues or anything you want to add there.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Congresswoman. And I would say, so a lot of the work that was done related to the staffing was the deferred retirement program was offered to folks. To my knowledge, we didn't do any relocations from FSA or NRCS, but that's my recollection.
Mm-hmm. I think the correlation speaks for itself. The timing of these efforts and then the announcements of retirements of about 15,000 people, it all happened at the same time. So these weren't people who on a rolling basis or over time decided it. These efforts took place, these people retired. Your own data speaks to that. So I think we should just acknowledge it and move on to the next answer.
So the next answer is, I think the Risk Management Agency is certainly looking at options and opportunities. And I've mentioned a couple of times, Congressman, I don't know if you were in here, but Administrator Swanson of the Risk Management Agency has held a series of specialty crop roundtables. And also, I think that we continue to look at how can we make the programs more responsive to all of our customers. And the agency, and it's just a matter of how things are. The agency was started. I mentioned its 30th birthday of Risk Management Agency was just a month ago. Was started to support Title I commodities, and so it's been an evolution, and we're getting better. We're getting better at offering products that are more suited to smaller farmers and to farmers that are growing things other than Title I commodities. Again, it's a moving target. We continue to try to improve the offerings that we have related to those risk management tools, and we continue to move in that direction.
I don't think I disagree with you. We can't hit all farmers on every piece of legislation, but I would just encourage that moving forward, we try to find opportunities to address some of the needs of our small farmers and specialty crop growers. With that, I yield back.
Joe, ladies, time has expired. Now recognize Mr. Rose from Tennessee.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig, for holding the hearing today, and thank you, Secretary Fordyce, for your time being here with us today. Mr. Secretary, I want to thank you for the engagement and responsiveness, I'll get it out in a second, that you and your team have shown as I've worked with producers regarding drought-related assistance. I appreciate the Farm Production and Conservation Mission Area's continued efforts to ensure that relief programs are administered efficiently and reach eligible producers in a timely manner. With the recent enactment of changes to the Livestock Forage Disaster Program that reduced the D2 drought eligibility threshold from 8 consecutive weeks to 4, many livestock producers are closely following the implementation of these reforms. Could you please discuss the Farm Production and Conservation Mission Area's strategy for administering these changes, including how FPAC is working to ensure timely delivery of assistance while maintaining program integrity and accurate eligibility determinations?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the changes made to the standing disaster programs and the implementation of those programs is critically important. In the first Trump administration, I served as the administrator of the Farm Service Agency, and because I was the administrator of the Farm Service Agency, actually went to a lot of places where we were close to triggering some of those standing disaster programs. So I think the efforts of this committee and this Congress to be able to right size and make those standing disaster programs more responsive certainly was very important. You talked about eligibility. I think whenever we look at opportunities that we have, any kind of a discretionary decision to make, we're going to err on the side of farmers and the eligibility and open that eligibility up to as many folks as we can. I don't know if I answered all your questions.
Well, and I might just add, I know with that change in qualifications or determinations, there's a software update that had to happen, and I'm hearing about this from my producers in my area, and just the delay in the decisions that come with that, particularly with reduced staff headcounts. And so just hoping that you'll be sensitive to that and how that delay in access to benefits or to assistance is impacting some of the folks that are severely affected in our area.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from rolling these programs out, deploying them, when there is a change to a program, you're correct. There probably likely is a software change. There's likely will have to be some sort of a very quick training so that our staff in the office know how to implement the new provisions. We try to do those as quickly as we can. And I would say, if I point back to the One Farmer, One File initiative, the IT modernization, our hope is, and we've seen this in one program, our hope is that IT development that is a part of the deployment of programs can happen quicker. And I mean, that's what we all would hope for, and I think we're going to see that as a benefit, another benefit of the One Farmer, One File.
Thank you. And Mr. Secretary, where do you believe the greatest vulnerabilities remain in the farm safety net, particularly for livestock producers and diversified family operations in states like Tennessee?
Well, as you know, we don't have a traditional safety net program for livestock like we do, for crops. But we do have a number of risk management products, whether that's revenue protection or other things related to folks that are in the livestock sector. And I think as we continue to evolve, as producers learn more about what those programs how those programs can be, a risk management tool or a safety net tool for them, I think we'll see higher subscription rates. It hasn't been that long ago that, if you were just a livestock producer, you probably didn't know where the FSA office was, because there was nothing there for a livestock producer. But we're starting to see the change in that with some of the livestock programs within FSA, and then certainly those tools at RMA.
Thank you. I see my time is expiring, and I appreciate you being here, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Van Orden, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Undersecretary, thank you very much for coming. We've had the pleasure of having Secretary Rollins in my district twice. Hopefully she's coming back. It is her second home. You're always welcome there. I feel obligated to address some of the comments that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have made regarding SNAP. And I was raised in abject rural poverty by a single mother, and we had food stamps where it was an actual stamp that you put on a card at the grocery store. So these programs are incredibly important. I volunteered to be on the SNAP subcommittee twice, and if I get reelected, I'm going to do it again, because I want to make sure that everyone understands how vital these programs are. So let's talk about SNAP rolls. briefly, and then I'll actually get to the subject of this hearing. So there's over 186,000 people that were enrolled in SNAP that are dead. There's over 500,000 people that were on SNAP and getting benefits from more than one state or more than one jurisdiction. So if you cut SNAP benefits for 500,000 people in half because they're getting benefits in 2 different states, you, by definition, have a reduction in the amount of people on SNAP. That's just a fact. So what we are trying to do is make sure that every single tax dollar that is allocated to go to a hungry child goes to the hungry child, not a fraudster. And to say that, you know, we're trying to starve children and treat families bad, that's just disingenuous. I mean, I understand their heart's in the right place, I really do. But we just got to stop that type of rhetoric. All right, now on to the subject of the hearing, sir. So there's some real disparities. I was an enlisted guy in the SEAL teams for a long time, so it's kind of like process, you know. There's a disparity between the amount of time to apply to some programs where you get awarded things. Like EQIP is 3 to 6 months, CSP is 3 to 6 months, but like ECAP can be 3 days, right? So what are we doing, or what are you doing over there to make sure that we can kind of level these bubbles? Because if, you know, 6 months to a farmer's, that's an entire growing season essentially. So, where I'm up north, you know, down south they grow year round. So what are you guys doing over there to make sure that, you know, Mr. Harris goes to try to get something from the USDA or FSA and it happens in a timely manner? Can you kind of explain that a bit?
Yes, sir, Congressman. You know, I think ECAP was pretty prescriptive. You know, not a lot of discretionary decisions. I wasn't here for that yet, but it did. It was pretty straightforward. Rolled out, I would say, incredibly successfully. EQIP, and it depends on what the contract is. It depends on how NRCS is engaging with that producer. Yeah. We certainly have an opportunity to shorten that time. Okay. And I believe we have a new chief at NRCS, Colton Buckley. Colton is laser focused on looking at process times, anything that could be slowing down these contracts and the deployment of these contracts. In some cases, there may be design work that has to happen as part of the EQIP project. So, not an excuse. It needs to be faster, and I think we're certainly looking at that.
Okay. Tell Colton to call Kelly Loeffler. So, Kelly has been able to get $200 billion in fraud recouped from the federal government, and she's also pushed out $45 billion worth of actual loans to businesses. That's the highest amount of money that has gone from the SBA in its 72-year history. So they're doing both things, and I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I'm saying, you know, where I come from, you go to somebody that's doing something right, and we call it, that's what right looks like. I'd strongly encourage you to speak to her team because she's just killing it over there, as is Brooke. We're very proud of her. So I don't have anything else for you other than the fact that I'm very happy that you're working for the American farmer, and I wish you the very best, sir. I yield.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields. Now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Carvajal, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Undersecretary Fordyce, welcome. I represent the Central Coast of California, where specialty crops make up the majority of agriculture grown in the area. Many farmers across the country, including in my district, are currently dealing with a multitude of challenges. Labor costs continue to rise. Growers are navigating uncertainty in export markets due to this administration's trade wars, as well as increasing droughts, floods, heat waves, and wildfires are creating production risks. At the same time, many specialty crop producers do not have access to the same farm safety net programs available to producers of major commodity crops, and instead must rely on more heavily on conservation programs, crop insurance, and disaster assistance to manage risk and remain competitive. And while H.R. 1 included some notable investments in farm conservation and disaster assistance programs under your mission area, this came at a cost of cutting SNAP funding that millions of Americans depend on. Unlike some of my colleagues who supported H.R. 1, I do not believe these priorities are mutually exclusive. We should not have to choose between supporting our farmers and supporting families struggling with food insecurity. We can and should make robust investments in both. Even with H.R. 1 only making investments to programs for growers, farm groups have made it clear this funding won't be enough and they will need additional farm aid given the unprecedented economic challenges they are currently facing. Nevertheless, the USDA moves forward with implementing H.R. 1. It is critical that these investments are delivered in a way that benefits all sectors of agriculture, including specialty crop producers. Can you provide examples of how USDA is ensuring that H.R. 1's investments in farm safety net, disaster, and conservation programs are reaching specialty crop growers in a meaningful way, particularly in California?
Yes, Congressman, thank you for that. You know, from an NRCS standpoint, 168 different conservation practice standards available. Those 168 conservation practice standards are available in California. That's a little bit of a change that we've made. Some states, in some cases, we're not offering all of those options. That has been a change that we have made and made those available in every state. From a safety net standpoint, certainly, the provisions within the Working Families Tax Cuts Act, we are well on our way to getting those administered, and certainly California farmers can take advantage of those. On the risk management side, we've had a few conversations about specialty crop farmers and the risk management tools available to them. The Administrator Swanson at the Risk Management Agency has conducted a series of specialty crop roundtables, and in those roundtables were farmers, also crop insurance agents that serve those areas and serve those farmers to better understand where the gaps are and where we're not meeting the needs of those specialty crop farmers. It's going to take a little bit. The development of a new product through Risk Management Agency, there is a process and it takes a bit. But certainly we are looking at all the opportunities to be able to serve all farmers and support them in the way that they need to be supported.
Thank you. Undersecretary, USDA indicated that the reorganization of the Farm Production and Conservation Mission Area will support the continued growth and effectiveness of the federal crop insurance program. Many specialty crop producers suffer from gaps, as you mentioned, in available insurance products and coverage levels. How will these organizational changes impact crop insurance accessibility and effectiveness for specialty crops grown in California and in my district?
So the reorganization, as it relates to RMA, really is the organization will look pretty much the same. There's very minor structural changes, but certainly, again, I would go back to the agency's very strong desire to be responsive to specialty crop farmers across the country. Certainly in California, it's critical, obviously. But continue to look for options and look for ways to be supportive of specialty crop farmers.
Thank you. I'm running out of time, but I think there's some funding limitations with EQIP and the CSP program that need certainly your attention. But with that, I have limited time. I'll submit this question for the record. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
All right, thank the gentleman. Gentleman yields back. Mr. Harris, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Undersecretary, thank you so much for being here today for this hearing. As a member of this committee, I was very proud of our portion of H.R. 1 last year that once again put American farmers first. And at a time when farmers are dealing with the rising input cost, animal diseases, natural disasters, I know in my district, producers are looking for certainty and reliable risk management tools to help keep their operations viable. For example, we've already heard here today, our livestock and poultry producers continue to face a steady stream of challenges from drought and the avian influenza to the recent threat posed by the New World screwworm. In my home state of North Carolina, we consistently rank among the top poultry producing states in the nation. And the poultry growers in our district would benefit from the results of the poultry insurance pilot program that's been created in H.R. 1. And this pilot program was designed to help producers manage extraordinary utility costs that are associated with extreme weather events that can significantly impact their bottom line. But I wanted to ask you, Mr. Undersecretary, if you could just provide us today an update on USDA's progress in developing and implementing this particular pilot program.
Yes, absolutely. I know that in the bill there was an opportunity for us to give us a 2-year runway, and I know that the Risk Management Agency, the FCIC board are already investigating options as it relates to that. As I explained a little bit to the congressman from California, sometimes these products take a little bit of time to get through the process, but we are certainly well on our way, and we will meet that deadline.
Are you getting feedback from some of the poultry industry stakeholders? I would be curious what kind of feedback, and how is that feedback shaping the final design of the program that you're developing?
So I know that poultry producers are a part of the conversation. I don't know that I've been a part of any of those discussions directly, but have the utmost confidence in the RMA staff and the administrator at RMA and the FCIC board to make sure they're having those critical conversations and gathering all the information that they need.
Okay. And as the USDA evaluates the pilot program over its initial 2-year period, are there any particular metrics that you could speak to that would be used to determine its success and effectiveness going forward?
So I think, when we look at other products, I think we will apply the same standards. One, that it is effective and meaningful to poultry producers. I think that's number one. Number two, is it responsible from a taxpayer's standpoint? Number three, is there integrity in the program, right? So there's not gaps and opportunities for folks potentially to take advantage of it. And usually when we're looking at products that we're going to introduce new into RMA and offer to farmers, those are the 3 things that we want to really make sure that we've got nailed down.
Excellent, excellent. Last year, following President Trump's return to the White House, the USDA initiated a review of the conservation projects funded through the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. And as part of that review, I understand several programs were paused, modified, or restructured, including the Biden-era partnerships on climate-smart commodities initiatives that were subsequently reworked into the Advancing Markets for Producers Initiative. In fact, following the restructure, Secretary Rollins stated, and I quote, said the Partnerships for Climate-Smart Commodities Initiative was largely built to advance the Green New scam at the benefit of NGOs, not American farmers. And so I know the Department of Agriculture found that in many cases a significant portion of that federal funding was not reaching the farmers directly. Can you walk us through, in just the last 40 seconds or so, how USDA conducted its review of these programs and what criteria is used to determine whether projects, again, should be continued, modified, or just terminated?
Yeah, absolutely. And that initial work happened before I was confirmed. But I do know that they made a comprehensive review of all of the climate smart grants and agreements. Looked at, and really one of the things that had to happen is that 65% of the value of that grant had to go to farmers. And so I would also say, and I think I mentioned it earlier, would applaud most of the grantees for coming to the table and negotiating and actually getting to a place where we could reissue that grant. We actually, by doing that, put nearly $500 million of that additional $500 million out to farmers.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time. I yield back.
Yeah, I thank the gentleman, and it looks like we have all of our members who were seeking to speak have done so. And so before we adjourn today, I invite the ranking member to share any closing comments that she might have.
Well, thank you. First and foremost, Mr. Undersecretary, thank you for being here today. USDA has the potential to play an important role in American agriculture and nutrition. Sadly, despite the hard work and professionalism of the civil servants at USDA, the Trump administration and their collaborators in Congress have truly undermined critical aspects of its core mission: expanding market access for family farmers, ensuring adequate nutrition and food assistance is available for America's young, old, and disabled, advancing evidence-based and science-based approaches to innovation. Too often these days, and to the detriment of America's hardworking rural communities, partisan politics have taken priority. I appreciate both your testimony and your answers today, particularly that you suggest you need more appropriations with respect to staffing. But I want to make sure specifically we all understand that it is President Trump's fiscal year 27 budget that recommended a $309 million cut to FSA staffing budget levels. Cuts to food assistance, tariffs, and wars. Cuts to USDA staff, high input cost, disappearing margins. The Trump administration says it puts farmers first, but its approach to farm country has been far from it. I hope that USDA can continue its mission to help farmers struggling with severe weather, disrupted markets, and tough times. Mr. Undersecretary, I know that you have a tough job, but I also know that bankruptcies are up nearly 50% in our country for farmers, 70% year over year with Midwest farmers. It's time to truly put America's farmers first. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. My closing comments, Undersecretary Fordyce, I just want to thank you and your staff. We put a lot of responsibility on your shoulders with the incredible legislation that we have passed and are in the process of passing, investing in the American farmer, rancher, forester, and really rural America. I want to appreciate your staff that are located here in D.C. and, quite frankly, those that are spread so widely across this great nation. I think USDA is obviously at its best as an agency because of how it's out there in those communities. I do want to correct the record about cuts to EQIP. I think it's important for folks to understand, and this is something I've heard previously, and I think it's important, facts, the truth matters. There was a charge out there, the Farm Food and National Security Act 2026, cut the EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. We all know how important that program is, probably one of the more popular ones or in terms of utilization. It's actually the complete opposite of a cut. The Farm Food and National Security Act of 2026 is now sitting in the capable hands of Senator John Boozman as chairman of the Senate Ag Committee. EQIP gets a 54% increase in baseline funding. This is possible because Republicans in Congress made the single largest long-term investment in EQIP in the history of the program through the Working Families Tax Cuts, H.R. 1, this summer. Now, the budget scoring for the conservation title, and I want to address that because I think that's where it created the confusion. I get that part. So where is the money going? The CBO analysis of the Farm Bill proves that no money is leaving the conservation title. H.R. 1 allowed Republicans in Congress to capture billions in expiring conservation dollars, and those dollars would have gone away. They would have been spent. Whether they've been spent well or not, that's beside the point. They would have been gone. And what we were able to do is reallocate those funds into the permanent baseline of the existing program. So they'll be here well into the future, every farm bill in the future that this committee takes on for decades. However, the rules governing the process of reconciliation didn't allow Congress to fund new programs or make important policy changes to existing programs. That's outside the scope of budget reconciliation. That's not the House's fault. Actually, the Senate defines those roles. This created the need to allocate money to EQIP and HR 1 as a temporary placeholder. With the reallocation of a smaller percentage of the historic increase in EQIP funding, the Farm, Food, and National Security Act was able to do a number of things. It was able to create the Forest Conservation Easement Program, FSEP, to protect and restore private working forest lands. We were able to allocate additional funding for the feral swine eradication program. We were able to fund the Transition Incentive Program in CRP, which was a priority of my colleagues that I'm proud to work with on the Democratic side within this committee. I also really want to do just a real brief clarification on SNAP. I heard about a lot of kids that were taken off of SNAP. And this is why we need to bring the governors or the people responsible for administering SNAP from these states in here, if that is occurring. Because if the parent chooses not to engage in, let's say everybody's SNAP eligible for 3 months. And, you know, if they, to continue on, you know, if they're eligible financially for SNAP, and the criterion are clear out there, age 18 to 64, they're able-bodied, that type of thing. They don't have children at home that they're caring for younger than age 14. If they're unwilling to engage in an average of 80 hours a month in either work, volunteering, or, quite frankly, my favorite, as somebody who loves career and technical education, some type of career and technical education or SNAP employment, then yes, that parent will come off of SNAP. That's a choice that they make. The children do not. The family will still get a SNAP benefit even if it's just for the children. So the children are not. So if there's something happening in these blue states I'm hearing about, you know, I think that's all the more reason we need to have probably the governor, who's responsible for everything in these states, come before this committee and explain how they're administering the SNAP program. Because what they're doing, as far as I can tell, is breaking the rules, the regulations, and perhaps the law. I want to thank you for your work implementing the historic investments in American farmers of all sizes and all types. Our row crops, our specialty crops, our organic farmers, our livestock ranchers, those poultry growers, our forests, our orchards, our groves, those who farm them. Like I said, we gave you a pretty heavy workload here, but I got complete confidence in you and your team. And you and your teams, and you in particular, Undersecretary, to let me know if there's additional assistance that is needed, because this implementation of what we have passed is really important. ARC and PLC enhancements, boosted premium support across all levels of crop insurance coverage, first-time opportunities for specialty crops. The fruits and vegetable folks are so excited about this. They're so appreciative. Improvements to the dairy margin coverage. And I guess one last thing I'll just mention again, a little partial to, because it was my piece of legislation, but this committee unanimously passed it several years ago, and it's been way too long for it to be implemented, and that's the Sustains Act, where we bring in those public-private partnerships, those folks, corporations, whomever it might be, that want to invest in conservation, because all that money comes in for conservation. So this is going to be on top of the icing on top of the historic investments that we've done in conservation. So thank you to you and your staff. Under the rules of the committee, the record of today's hearing will remain open for 10 calendar days to receive additional material and supplementary written responses from the witnesses to any question posed by a member. This hearing of the Committee on Agriculture is adjourned.